Roxburgh, who's the new chair, he started in May last year. I started in as CEO in June last year. We committed to holding the highest standards of corporate governance and culture throughout the organisation. But we were really clear as well that we wanted to be judged on actions, not just words. And when it comes to what we've done, we've put a huge amount of additional governance in place. We've raised the standard of culture for ourselves as Lloyds, because we have to hold that bar and that mirror to ourselves first and foremost. And even though when we look at the stats and the data, when we look at the surveys where insurance is above the benchmarks of financial services, where we have improving and very commendable data in terms of the balance of who's in the workforce, it'll never be enough. It'll never be enough because we want to be the best, and it'll never be enough because insurance is it's a global family. Everybody feels a very big part of the insurance family. And so when we let ourselves down on non-financial misconduct, it feels very personal for everybody. So it's something that we'll continue to think about, continue to try and drive ourselves to be the very best. And in terms of how we measure it, we put out in the strategy for the next 5 years. We talk a lot about financial return. We talk an awful lot about capital and cost. But right at the centre of it, we put a Lloyds to be proud of. And we said that our engagement survey, our people's view of us, and our net promoter score, everybody who deals with us, is going to be measured. And if it's anything short of excellent, it won't be good enough.
Is the insurance sector generally still too much for Boys Club?
No, I don't think so. I think it is massively expanded to be inclusive over time. We have a good balance within. I'll talk about Lloyds as a corporation itself. We have an excellent balance, sort of 50-50 or slightly better balance of gender, both in terms of leadership and across the corporation. We are continuing to drive a good balance in terms of ethnic diversity, but we have to push to increase that inclusion, because it's to have the best culture, you have to have the best talent as well. So we are actually trying to bring in the best of the best from the next generation. And as in a world where we often see headlines about a lack of opportunity for early careers, graduates, etc., we are doubling down. We're actually in 2027 doubling our graduate intake, our early careers intake, both from schools, graduates. We'll be looking to cast the net as wide as possible, because actually when people come into insurance, and that's the key to bring them in, they tend to stay for their entire careers and retire pretty late. So it's a great industry, but we need to make sure that we are open to all and inclusive to all, and people can enjoy it and be themselves when they're in our industry.
Thank you for listening to The Interview. If you enjoyed this conversation, you can find many more episodes of The Interview wherever you get your BBC podcasts, including ones with Chief EU Brexit negotiator Michel Barnier, Head of the Commonwealth Games Katie Sudlier, and Artemis astronaut Victor Glover. Until next time, bye for now.
Good morning, Manitoba. It is Tuesday, July 14th. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. I'm Chloe Friesen, filling in for Marcy Marcusa. Let's say hello to our team this morning. Abby Adiemi is our technical producer. Darren Morash is our YouTube live stream producer. Corey Funk is our show director. And Heather Wells joins us with news headlines. Good morning. We are just waiting.
Morning.
Oh, good morning,
Well,
Heather.
hundreds of people stood in 34. Sorry, let me start that again because I have the wrong button pressed. There we go. Okay, hundreds of people stood in 34-degree heat yesterday at Winnipeg City Hall at the courtyard. They were there to protest a federal gun buyback program, and 3 Manitoba Conservative MPs were part of that rally. Kildona St. Paul MP Raquel Dancho says the rally was held at City Hall because Winnipeg's one of the few jurisdictions where police are administering the gun buyback program. The owner of a cottage that burned down from the Lynn Lake forest fire and 7 people who fled that fire are suing mining company Alamos Gold. In a lawsuit filed this month, the plaintiffs claim the gold miner started a controlled burn in May of 2025 and let it get out of control. We'll hear a response to that coming up in our next local news at 6:30.
Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
That is CBC's Heather Wells. Well, coming up today on Information Radio, First Nations leaders from across Canada are meeting today for the Assembly of First Nations General Assembly. They are expected to discuss concerns about federal major projects, legislation, water rights, and more. We'll hear more on what to expect from this week's meetings. And this heat wave has brought up many concerns, but one of the biggest is the health and safety of those most vulnerable, like those without adequate cooling systems. We're going to hear from a Manitoba woman who is deeply worried about her father living in a care home without air conditioning. As well, an outbreak of the diarrhea-causing parasite Cyclospora has infected more than 3,000 people across Michigan and Ohio. We're going to hear from a director with Canada's National Microbiology Lab about what concerned Canadians can do to protect themselves. Stay tuned for that and much more.
They need to be more involved as stakeholders, owners, and investors.
We're no longer going to be giving up our resources for a little bit of money here and there for education or housing. Those days are over.
Part of this week's AFN gathering will focus on planning another meeting. This one, a historic first between the AFN, premiers, and the Prime Minister, scheduled for this fall. Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News, Ottawa.
Parts of Canada are sweltering under extreme heat. Environment Canada is issuing warnings and alerts across several provinces. Experts say temperatures in some regions could reach the mid-40s. It has health authorities concerned about heat-related illnesses. The CBC's Talia Sarv has more.
You leave this apartment? Yes.
Going door to door, health workers in Montreal, like Runa Lila, hand out cooling kits. It's here keeping cool isn't just for comfort, but a necessity.
Some family, they don't have the AC. So in that case, this is very important.
From southeast Saskatchewan to Quebec's west, Canada is feeling the heat. 4 provinces under warnings this week. Jennifer Vanos researches connections between extreme heat and human health. She urges Canadians to take precautions, particularly children, seniors and those with pre-existing illnesses.
Pay attention to your body. Stay hydrated. If you're going to do activity, do it earlier in the day or find an indoor space that's cool to do it. Check in on each other.
2026 is on track to be one of the hottest years on record globally, which many climate scientists attribute to human-caused climate change. It comes as heat waves continue to grip Europe, where thousands of related deaths were reported in June. Talia Saab, CBC News, Toronto.
An ICE agent claims he feared for public safety when he shot and killed a motorist. A man was killed in Maine during an immigration operation yesterday. This is the second time in a week that a person has been shot and killed by an immigration official. I'm joined by the CBC's Katie Nicholson in Washington. And Katie, what do we know?
It's not a whole lot. We know that yesterday morning ICE agents were conducting an operation in Biddeford, Maine. It's roughly 30 kilometers south of Portland, and they shot and killed this 26-year-old man from Colombia, and he was in a white Kia. Video of the scene in the aftermath, they show ICE agents pulling the man's limp body from the Kia and multiple bullet holes in the front windshield. And what led up to that moment is now under intense scrutiny. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security said that ICE tried to stop the car, and they allege it was coming from an address they were targeting and that the car attempted to flee the scene. And the ICE officer fired because he was, quote, fearing for public safety. But Maine Senator Angus King is among the many questioning that statement from DHS.
The bottom line is you have to either fear for your own safety or the safety of others. And so far, we haven't seen evidence of that.
Now, King says that the DHS secretary also told him the man was not the target of the ICE operation. And of course, this comes within a week of ICE agents fatally shooting a 52-year-old Mexican man who was also not the target of a removal operation.
These are not the first high-profile shooting deaths by ICE agents. What more can you tell us?
Well, look, it comes as prosecutors in Minnesota are still trying to get to the bottom of the ICE-involved shooting that took the lives of Renee Good, and a few weeks later, it was Alex Preddy. There's also this wider scrutiny. The way that ICE has conducted itself continues to spark outrage and protests in the country, including now a ramping up of that dissent in Maine.
All right, thank you, Katie.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Katie Nicholson in Washington. In Bahrain, police and paramedics rushed towards a cloud of smoke in the capital, Manama. It was one of the areas targeted by Iranian airstrikes overnight. Iran's Revolutionary Guard put out a statement that was read on the local state news.
The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps said several weapons support depots, a satellite communications center, and accommodation buildings for U.S. forces in Bahrain had been targeted in the second wave of Operation Nasser II.
Both the U.S. and Iran are vying for control of the Strait of Hormuz. U.S. President Donald Trump is now floating the idea of charging a toll for safe passage through the waterway, something he called illegal when Iran suggested it. Iran is accusing the U.S. of inciting vessels to use an illegal route. Iran says cooperation with the U.S. would result in damage, delays, and a global energy crisis. Icebergs sunk the Terra Nova in 1943, and now they're keeping the ship's secrets locked away. The ice is preventing scientists from completing a first-ever 3D scan of the sunken vessel. As Peter Cowan reports, the international crew is trying to outmaneuver icebergs to finish the job.
What I want to do, I want to sit here and see if it starts to change direction.
On the bridge of the research vessel Atlantis, they're tracking two icebergs. Bruce Strickrod is the chief pilot for the submersible Alvin. They're getting too close. He has to cancel the afternoon dive.
Having them near is not the same as having them literally chase you away from the wreck site.
After the icebergs floated away, the mission continued. This is the second shipwreck the Royal Canadian Geographical Society is studying on its expedition to the Labrador Sea. Terra Nova ferried Robert Falcon Scott on his doomed quest to be the first to reach the South Pole more than 100 years ago. Later, during the Second World War, it sank off Greenland, ferrying supplies. Now they're capturing thousands of underwater images of the shipwreck to create a 3D model. Dwight Coleman is the head of ocean imaging for the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution.
There hasn't been many that have been studied in this amount of detail, so we're quite fortunate to be here where we are now with the camera system that we have to be able to collect this information.
Kirsten Meyer-Kaiser is the marine biologist on the expedition. She's using the 3D model to study the wreck at a level of detail not previously possible.
So I know not just I'm on the bow, I'm on the stern, but this particular sample is 30 meters from the bow, and that means that I can analyze things a lot more quantitatively.
Today's dives are the last chance to gather data about this shipwreck before the expedition returns to Massachusetts. Peter Cowan, CBC News, on board the research ship Atlantis off the coast of Greenland.
You do not have to cross the Atlantic to find passionate French soccer fans. Just head to the south coast of Newfoundland. Ahead of today's World Cup semi-final match between Spain and France, locals in Fortune say they'll be cheering for their neighbors on St. Pierre and Miquelon. Laura Howells explains.
If Canada couldn't do it, why not have our neighbors bring it home?
Ambrose Price is by the ferry terminal in Fortune, the small Newfoundland town where you catch the boat to France, just 90 minutes away.
We're so close, you could literally kick a soccer ball from here to St. Pierre if you wanted to.
The French islands of St. Pierre and Miquelon are about 45 kilometers off the coast, and it's a far cry from rural Newfoundland. They use the euro, different electrical outlets, French cars on the street, shops close between noon and 2. Jennifer Robert manages the ferry service.
You get a lot of people from St. Pierre who buy cabins and cottages and spend their summers here in Newfoundland, and then you also just get people coming back and forth all the time.
There's a long history connecting the two places. Joshua de Lizarga lives in Miquelon.
There are islanders there, we are islanders, so there is something special when we are from islands.
Brian Rose grew up playing hockey against teams in St. Pierre. There's a sports rivalry there. But in the World Cup, he's laying down arms.
You know, we were cheering for Canada while we were in the big match, but now that we're not, we're hoping our friends can have some success.
Ambrose Price will be watching the match later today.
We really hope that they bring home that cup.
Laura Howells, CBC News, Fortune, Newfoundland and Labrador.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime at cbcnews.ca. If you're enjoying the World Report podcast, please follow us and tell a friend. It helps spread the word. I'm Marcia Young.
And filling in this morning for Marcy Marcusa. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. 89.3 FM, 990 AM on our YouTube live stream or anywhere on your CBC News app. Well, coming up on the show, First Nations leaders from across Canada are meeting today for the Assembly of First Nations General Assembly. They are expected to discuss concerns about federal major projects legislation, water rights, and more. We'll hear what to expect from this week's meetings. Also, we are continuing our conversation about the Nakba exhibit at the Canadian Museum of Human Rights. Yesterday, we heard from a Swedish curator about a similar exhibit in Stockholm. Today, we're hearing from the Swedish journalist who helped create it. But first, after a standoff with the Trump administration, the Gordie Howe International Bridge will finally open at the end of July. We'll talk to Ryan Tumulty, a political reporter. It's time now to turn to news headlines with CBC's Heather Wells.
Good morning. Well, seniors living in a West St. Paul care home have been without air conditioning for days. Sherry Schindruck's father is a resident at Middle Church Home of Winnipeg. She says the fact it's been without air conditioning for so long is unacceptable. The Winnipeg Regional Health Authority says crews are working to fix a mechanical issue. Opipon Napiwin Cree Nation says it still isn't getting clear answers about when the community's power will return. The First Nation declared a local state of emergency late last month as wildfire burned nearby. Most of the 1,100 on-reserve population has left that community. The vice chief there, Oliver Dysart, says he feels like the nation is fending for itself. We'll hear more in our next local news coming up at 6:30.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
That is CBC's Heather Wells. Well, hello and good morning to the rest of the team here on Information Radio. Darren Morash is our YouTube live stream producer. Abby Adiyemi is our technical producer, and he's here with a look at the weather forecast. Abby, I didn't cringe when I walked out the door this morning.
Yeah,
I could breathe.
Yeah, you could breathe because the system actually moved into the north central part of the province, where we have the yellow air quality warning and the heat warnings present in that part of the province. We're talking about the smoke from the wildfire impacting the region, and of course we have this extreme heat hitting that region also. But for the southern part of the province, Chloe, I'll tell you, we're finally getting a break from this extreme heat that we've been seeing since tail end of Saturday into the whole of Monday. Now it's lifted. We have a clear summer day to experience in the southern region. Here in Winnipeg already, we're starting the day mainly clear skies and comfortable, breezy 20 degrees outside. We're looking forward to more sunny conditions, and we'll see a highs close to 29 degrees today. However, you still need to deal with the humidity around 32, and that's what we're seeing across the south. 15 to 22s in most regions, crawling close to 30 degrees today. But up north, that's where we have the hazy conditions and the smoke and of course the heat impacting that region. But right now it's sunny across board, it's clear, and we're seeing temperatures already in the 20s.
All right, thank you, Abby.
Thank you.
That is CBC's Abby Adeyemi. I am also joined this morning by show director Corey Funk. Corey, how's it going?
Going okay so far. It felt cooler outside on the bike ride in today. It was probably like my house. We don't have air conditioning. It was like only 26 degrees in our house this morning. It was chilly. I was like, 26. And so looks for a nicer day, obviously. But as for the commute, the one issue is actually in northern Manitoba, new highway closure. That Highway 493 that takes from Leaf Rapids to South Indian Lake closed due to a fire. It was closed yesterday. So I'm sure people in that area are well aware that it is closed. Still a bunch of highway closures in the Parkland region as well due to flooding. But if you do see anything else going on here in Winnipeg, if you're walking, biking, driving, you see anything going on, seems pretty quiet so far, you can let me know. That number to call on the commuter line, 204-788-3093.
This morning, we're continuing our conversation about the Nakba exhibit at the Canadian Museum for Human Rights. Nakba is an Arabic word meaning catastrophe and refers to the displacement of approximately 750,000 Palestinians during the creation of Israel. The CMHR has faced criticism over its exhibit, which shares personal stories of displaced Palestinians. Jewish groups in Winnipeg say they should have been consulted and worry the exhibit will fuel anti-Semitism. Sophia Hagman is a curator at the National Museum of World Culture in Stockholm, Sweden. She curated a similar Nakba exhibit in Stockholm, which faced similar criticism. Yesterday, we heard Hagman describe the response the Mediterranean Museum got after the exhibit opened.
Well, the public reaction was very positive. It was very welcoming. We had a lovely opening event. It was very warm. Hundreds of people attended. And given this was a very, very small exhibition, we had many visitors. But then, of course, there were also groups that expressed their concern. We had the Central Council of Jewish Communities in Sweden, who sent us a long letter of concern that they also published on their webpage. It was not as much about the content of the exhibit as about the timing. Why did we open it now after October 7th? And they felt or interpreted it as we were sort of taking sides in an ongoing armed conflict.
That was Sophia Hagman, who curated a Nakba exhibit in Stockholm, Sweden. That exhibit was based on the work of Brent Hermela, a former business journalist, author, and podcaster, and a member of Sweden's Jewish community. His mother was killed by a suicide bomber while she was visiting Israel in 2002. He told the Weekend Morning Show's Nadia Kidwai how that tragedy led him to sitting down to hear the stories of almost 80 displaced Palestinians.
You clearly suffered pain and loss and trauma. So how did you go from that to documenting the stories of Nakba survivors? I'm really interested in that through line.
I found that my emotional situation didn't change by my work. I understand now much later that trauma can't be dealt with through work, not at least by me. I went back being a journalist for many years. And then I got tired of that. And then I started writing books. And then I just stumbled into the idea of making podcasts. And the first subject I did was Holocaust survivors. because I knew some, my parents knew some. I did 120 of those, and I added some second generation stories, second generation Holocaust survivors. And then a friend told me, why don't you do the same thing with the Nakba? Because the Holocaust podcast was quite successful, if I may say that. And I turned it into a book also and some exhibitions. So a friend's friend said, why don't you do it on Nakba? And I'd been thinking about the Nakba quite some time, but I didn't know how to get into that story. And then I realized, hey, he's right. Podcast that I can do. So I started with that.
Was your friend Palestinian who suggested this?
No, Swedish friend. He's active. I mean, he's very critical, like I am, of the occupation and displacement, the Israeli occupation and everything. And that became a podcast, and that became a book, and that ended up both as this exhibition that you interviewed Sofia Hegman about, and also actually a play. So it really, everything evolved in a very meaningful way.
You grew up in quite a Zionist household. What did you know about the Nakba before you started hearing these kind of first-hand testimonies from survivors?
I was brought up by two Jewish persons, my mother and my father, whom I love. They're not, my mother is obviously for that, thank God, from cancer. It was an interesting mix. It was Jewish, of course. My mother was quite religious. My father was an atheist. So that was a healthy mix, I think. But both of them were Zionists.
Yeah.
So I was brought up in that bubble in small Stockholm. That was all I knew. I knew that a lot of Palestinians left their homes 48 for some reason, and that's what I knew about them. I know nothing, actually. I know nothing. And eventually, you know, when I turned 20, or, you know, your critical thinking, if I may call it that, evolves. And then I started thinking, hey, is this really plausible? Is it? I became a journalist when I was 24. So I put this on the shelf for a lot of years, but I had it in the back pocket, so to speak.
So you end up speaking to Nakba survivors. There's one story, I think it's one of the earliest interviews you did, with this older woman whom you met in Jordan, and you asked her to share her Nakba story. Tell us that account.
I was more of a journalist then than I am now, actually, because I consider myself as a writer. I was part of that tradition, and so I said, you know, tell me about the Nakba, only what you heard and only what you see. No hearsay, nothing else than the Nakba, please, madame, please. And she answers, maybe she was, 85 years old at that time. So she says, what Nakba? What Nakba? And I thought to myself, oh my God, I came too late. She's already, you know, dizzy. She doesn't know what's going on here. So I said, what do you mean, madame? She said, do you mean then 48 Nakba, the 67 Nakba, the first Intifada, and so on, in the 50s, in the 56 year of atrocities, and as you know, ongoing. She gave me a quick lesson to realize how little I knew about anything. So that was very helpful. And from that low point of knowledge, I worked myself up.
Yeah. There was also another really interesting story you told me earlier, and it's actually one of these objects is featured in the exhibit, and it was the story of Rashid El-Hayya.
He's an author. He's still alive. And so we connected, you know, over books and stuff. Then he showed me a glass jar, and he said, this I brought when I became a Swedish citizen. I was allowed to go back to Israel. Palestinians, as we know, are not allowed to go back in Israel, even though they were born there, or Palestine. So he went back into Tzfat, to find his home where he grew up, and he found it. It was a gallery, actually. It happens, you know. It was modernized, but he collected some earth and put it in the glass jar and took it home. And he showed it to me like an object of holiness almost. He said, when I'm down, when I'm depressed, I open the jar and I smell, the earth from Palestine, and I feel better. So I said, how often do you do this, Rashid? Well, several times a day usually, because I'm depressed, because I'm not allowed to live where I was born. So I got curious and I asked him, can I smell this earth from the Holy Land, so to speak, or from Palestine rather? So I said, sure. And when I looked at it closer, it wasn't really earth. It was just gravel or small stones. I don't know what you call it in English. So I put my nose into the jar and I said, hey, this doesn't smell anything, Rashid. And he says, well, to me it does. That shut me up real quick.
When you were doing these interviews or, listening and sitting across from these Nakba survivors and hearing their testimonies, how open were you about your Jewish identity when you were interviewing them?
It differs. It was like maybe 80 meetings that I remember, 75, 80, maybe more. I don't go into anyone's home in Palestine or in Sweden or whatever the subject is saying, hey, I'm a Jew. That's not how I start a conversation with anyone. Maybe I say, hey, I'm a Swede. Yeah. That could be, but not, I don't present myself as a Jew. I am a Jew. So usually I don't start in that end. But if we connect, if we have an open and nice conversation, yeah, maybe I'll, after 1 or 2 hours, I say, yeah, I'm Jewish. This is me. This is my story, maybe a little bit. I usually don't go into what happened to my mother. There's no reason to it. Sometimes I do, mostly don't.
And what was their reaction when you did?
Fine. Usually it was people who were telling sunny stories from before the Nakba, intermarriage between Jews and Palestinians, playing at each other's weddings, having kids.
One of the interesting things I thought, you mentioned in speaking with these Nakba survivors was how they talked about Palestinian Jews versus what they referred to as Zionist Jews or Eastern European Jews. Can you expand on that? What you heard from them?
That was really like the woman asking me about what Nakba. That was something completely new. They used several expressions. One was Palestinian Jew. One was national Jews, meaning they were born in Palestine. And I think even a third expression that I don't get hold of right now. And compared to Zionist Jews or European Jews or East or Russian. And several of them very heartfelt said, we suffer for what Europe did to the Jews. We didn't do this, but we pay the price. And I can agree with that.
That was Bernd Hermela speaking with Weekend Morning Show host Nadia Kidwai on Saturday. Hermela's work was used in the creation of a Nakba exhibit at the National Museums of World Culture in Stockholm, Sweden.
Manitoba may have a reputation for being cold and flat, but our podcast isn't. I'm Marcy Marcusa, the warmest host on the prairies. Even when my podcast, This is Manitoba, is exploring some challenging issues. I'm never flat when it comes to holding our leaders to account. Some of those interviews have been called spicy. If you care about this province, check out This is Manitoba, with new episodes dropping every Wednesday.
The time is 6:26. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. Well, I really don't have to tell you this, but it's been a hot couple of days for Manitoba. Heat warnings flashed across the province yesterday. Environment Canada says 7 new records were set, while 4 locations tied previous records. Right now, there is a yellow level heat warning in effect for the Paw, Flin Flon, Norway House Island Lake. But today in Winnipeg, the forecast is a bit cooler, calling for a high of 29 with a humidex of 32. City officials are reminding people to stay cool as much as possible. So we sent CBC Sophia Peralta Barone to ask Winnipeggers at Central Park how they're beating the heat. Dave Schmidt is one of those individuals, and right now he doesn't have AC in his apartment.
The hallways are air conditioned, but the individual suites. It's up to each owner because they're condominiums. So some are, some aren't. Mine isn't, but I've got fans and a couple little water air coolers that it's been keeping everything at bay.
How are you beating the heat?
It's quite simple. Just be responsible. Lots of hydration. Drink plenty of water.
I'm Ryan Saka. As you can see right now, I work with some kids, so we brought them to a splash pad, trying to get as much water or in you as possible, drinking a lot of water, staying inside mostly, AC a lot. So
With your kids, did you have to sort of change some programming to keep them inside because of the heat?
yes, for sure, because especially yesterday, I think yesterday was very bad. And I think you have to change a couple things just to keep everybody safe. You don't know how kids may react to a very extreme high conditions of weather, so you never know. You got to be safe no matter what.
Jacques Fournier.
And who do you got with you right now?
This is Blackie.
Hi, Zach. How old is Zach?
She is 3 years old.
She's 3 years old. And right now, as a dog owner, how are you balancing being safe in the heat and then also having to exercise your dog?
Making sure they walk as much as they can on the grass, keeping them in the shade as much as possible, make sure they have lots of water and short bursts of little bit of walks, and then indoors or air conditioning, then a little bit of walks, a little bit of air conditioning.
She looks a little hot right now. How do you know when it's been too much for her?
Usually by their temperature, like you can feel it on their skin or their paws too. Well, it'll usually tell you if it's too warm.
And I also know we're taking care of the dog right now, but how do you take care of yourself?
Basically the same thing as the dog.
Thank you so much, though.
The sound of a panting dog. That was CBC's Sophia Peralta-Barone speaking to Winnipeggers about how to beat the summer heat. And speaking of heat, in our 7 o'clock hour, the heat wave has brought up many, many concerns. One of the biggest is the health and safety of those who are most vulnerable, like those without adequate cooling systems. Coming up in our 7 o'clock hour, we're speaking to a Manitoba woman who is deeply worried about her father living in a care home without air conditioning. So that conversation is coming up in the next hour of Information Radio. Stay tuned for that. But coming up shortly here on Information Radio, the Globe and Mail reporter Willow, I have the wrong bill there. We're going to talk to Negon Sinclair. We're going to talk to Negon Sinclair about some of the key issues up for discussion at the Assembly First Nations Annual General Assembly, which starts this morning. We will bring you that conversation and our Ottawa report coming up shortly here on Information Radio. But first, it's time for your CBC local news.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg at 6:30. You're going to feel the difference when you step outside. 20 degrees right now. Winnipeg, southern Manitoba, not in a heat warning, although heat warnings yellow level do continue for parts of central and northern Manitoba. In Winnipeg, we start today off with sunshine. Increasing afternoon clouds and a bit of a northwest breeze is going to cool our temperature to a high of just 29. Seniors at 3 Winnipeg personal care homes are feeling that heat. Air conditioning is out or limited at Donwood Personal Care Home, Pembina Place Personal Care Home, and Middlechurch Home of Winnipeg. Sherry Schindruck's father is a resident at Middlechurch. She says that facility has been without air conditioning for several days, and what's being done to restore it, she says, isn't good enough.
Everybody is saying the same thing. We're doing the best we can.
Okay.
You know, we've done everything we can. And I said, no, they haven't.
The Winnipeg Regional Health Authority says a mechanical issue is affecting air conditioning in some areas of the Middlechurch home. A spokesperson says crews are working to fix the problem as quickly as possible. They are using portable cooling equipment and say residents are able to access air-conditioned common areas. A number of summer camps in Winnipeg have been slashing outdoor time during the heat wave. The Winnipeg School Division says it's important to keep their programming going because many families don't have air conditioning at home. On scorching days, they are now reducing physical activity. In the South End, the Fort White Alive camp is having breaks held inside and looking at more water activities. Leah Smith is with the camp.
overheating holds a lot of havoc on the body, and especially with children that might not have that kind of experience understanding what their body is communicating when they're really hot. So it's really our job to make those decisions for them.
Provincial baseball championships changed schedules over the weekend because of the heat. Athletes competed and trained during cooler times. Opipon Napiwin Cree Nation is calling for better preventative measures against future wildfires. The First Nation declared a local state of emergency late last month as wildfire burned nearby. Most of the 1,100 on-reserve residents have left the community. Chief Shirley Descharmes says the nation is in the same spot they were in last year with power outages and evacuations.
Manitoba Hydro must implement proactive mitigation measures, including, and we have stated this many times, vegetation and brush management.
Ducharme would also like to see pole wrapping and infrastructure protection. In an email, Manitoba Hydro says the utility cut trees and wrapped more than 150 poles in the community with fire-resistant mesh, but adds they, quote, realize there's more to be done and plan to do more as soon as possible. The owner of a cottage that burned down during the Lynn Lake forest fire and 7 people who fled that fire have sued mining company Alamos Gold. In a lawsuit filed July 6th, the plaintiffs claim the gold miner started a controlled burn in May 2025 and let it burn out of control. They're seeking $95,000 and other damages. Their allegations have not been proven in court and no statement of defense has been filed. Alamos Gold told CBC News in 2025 it had permits for the controlled burn and rejected allegations of negligence. 3 Manitoba Conservative MPs made a rare appearance outside Winnipeg City Hall yesterday. Kildona St. Paul MP Raquel Dancho, Colin Reynolds of Elmwood Transcona, and Provencher's Ted Falk spoke at a rally against a federal Liberal gun buyback program. Dancho says City Hall was chosen because the Winnipeg Police Service took part in the plan.
Unfortunately, Winnipeg is one of the only jurisdictions in the country that's really going along with this nonsensical plan. I'm very proud of our Winnipeg police, very proud of the work they do. Unfortunately, we don't have nearly enough police to keep up, as you know, with the violent crime in this city.
The Winnipeg Police Service says violent crime in this city dropped in 2025. 1 person has died in an apartment fire in Edmonton. It happened late last night in that city's north end. Witnesses say the 3-story building was quickly engulfed in flames. The building houses businesses on the ground level with apartments on the upper floors. It is not clear where the victim was. The cause of the fire is not determined. And strikes and counterstrikes between the U.S. and Iran carried on for a 3rd straight night as Washington and Iran battle for the control of the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. Central Command has released video, it says, shows fighter jets taking off from a warship. Military officials say their 5-hour mission struck various sites across Iran. Iran is responding with attacks on U.S. allies on the Gulf. The UAE says a crew member was killed and 8 others injured after 2 oil tankers were hit by Iranian missiles. Jordan and Bahrain says they also have been targeted in overnight attacks. The reinstatement of the U.S. blockade of Iranian ports is due to come into effect later today, and this renewed violence is pushing global oil prices up higher. You can hear more national and international news coming up on World Report at 7, and you can find the latest Manitoba news updated throughout your day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
That is CBC's Heather Wells. I'm Chloe Friesen. You're listening to Information Radio. Joined now by Abby Adeyemi with an update on the weather. Abby, I know we've got some, I guess we call it relief. I know it's still hot, but relief in the south.
Yeah, I think it's more like we're getting a break from this extreme conditions that we're seeing across the province. No warnings for the southern part of the province. We're more like looking at a clear summer day across the southern regions with temperatures just crawling close to 30 degrees later in the day. But in the central and into much of northern Manitoba, we still have this yellow level air quality warning, and of course heat warnings also in place as intense wildfire smoke creates hazy and poor visibility. And of course we see temperatures that will be lingering above 30 degrees in the north later today. But for the south, Winnipeg, we're looking at temperatures just crawling close to 21 degrees. We're warming up to 29 later with the humidity factored in. It's going to feel somewhere close to 33 degrees. And for other parts of the south, we're seeing sunshine. That's the theme for the day. Most regions also warming up to about 22 degrees later. Up north, that's where we have those smoky conditions, and of course the heat warnings in place with actual temperatures in the 30s and even warmer than that. But for now, it's more about the smoke impacting a whole lot of regions up north. So it's more like stories of two regions, hot and smoky up north, and the south is like, it's not as bad as yesterday. And that's what we're getting today. But right now, it is around 20 degrees, and we only get to 29 today.
All right. Thank you, Abby.
Thank you.
Joining me now is Corey Funk with an update on the commute. Good morning.
Good morning. The only new highway closure, new-ish, is closed yesterday. 493 from Leaf Rapids to South Indian Lake in northern Manitoba closed due to a fire. Still a lot of closed highways due to floods in the Parkland region. But if you see anything else going on here in the city, anywhere else, give me a call, 204-788-3093.
Thank you very much, Corey.
Thank you.
Well, let's now turn to Krista Lee Ramlakan. She joins us with the business report. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Chloe.
So, President Donald Trump says the U.S. will reinstate a blockade on Iran in the Strait of Hormuz. What's the latest on that, and what's been the reaction in the markets?
Well, Trump has also suggested the U.S. will impose fees and charge other ships for safe passage. And that move would upend years of American policy supporting freedom of navigation across the globe. And oil prices jumped and stock indexes fell following Trump's announcement yesterday. Today, world shares are mixed, with markets in Tokyo and Seoul rebounding from early losses. And the price of Brent crude has climbed to more than $86 US a barrel after soaring nearly 10% yesterday. WTI is over $80 a barrel now. Now, oil prices are still below their wartime peak, but uncertainty over the future course of supplies has deepened as the US and Iran have each asserted they control the strait. And a Canadian shipping firm says it has repeatedly had to postpone plans to exit the Strait of Hormuz after nearly 5 months trapped in the Persian Gulf. So Quebec-based Des Gagnés' 2 freighter ships were the only 2 known Canadian commercial vessels stuck in the Gulf when the U.S. and Israel launched attacks on Iran in late February. The vice president of the company says U.S. Navy officials have provided a route to steer clear of mines and have pledged a measure of protection when the time comes to leave. But the departure date remains a moving target now, given America's renewed shipping blockade on Iran and this fresh round of attacks.
Next, Krista Lee, there's a new warning from experts on AI.
Yes, that's right. It seems like we're always hearing some warning about AI, but this time more than 200 experts are urging action on AI's economic impact. So hundreds of economists say institutions must act now to address how artificial intelligence could transform the economy and put many people out of work. An open letter has been signed by top economists, along with computer scientists and even some executives at tech companies, including Anthropic, Google, and OpenAI. So the letter says AI could drive a transformation of our economy that is larger than the Industrial Revolution, but unfolding over a shorter time frame. So the letter has so far been signed by more than 200 economists and AI researchers, including 15 Nobel Prize winners.
Lastly, some U.S. states are suing to block Paramount's acquisition of Warner Brothers. What are the details on that?
Yes, so 12 states have sued to block Paramount's takeover of Warner Brothers Discovery, arguing that the $81 billion merger would extinguish competition in Hollywood and lead to fewer choices for consumers. So the Office of California's Attorney General is leading the coalition, and it alleges that the proposed merger would lead to higher prices, lower quality, and less content for movies and the television landscape. So Paramount maintains that merging with Warner, though, would be good for competition, and the company says it will vigorously defend the transaction. And a Paramount-Warner combo would bring together two of Hollywood's last 5 legacy studios, and it would mean putting Warner's HBO Max, libraries filled with cult favorite titles like Harry Potter and CNN under the same roof of Paramount-owned CBS and the Paramount Plus streaming service. So that would be a lot of very diversified media under one umbrella, including 2 different news organizations.
Lots to watch there. Crystalie, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Chloe.
That was Crystalie Ramlakan with the business news. This morning, hundreds of chiefs and other First Nations leaders from across Canada are converging in Ottawa for the Assembly of First Nations Annual General Assembly. There, they will set the agenda for the AFN's advocacy work for this coming year. On the agenda is everything from housing to water rights. Ottawa's drive to accelerate major projects such as pipelines is also up for discussion. Here's National Chief Cindy Woodhouse-Nepenak with reporters yesterday.
First Nations are for economic growth. That will drive Canada's collective prosperity for the next century, but not at the expense of our rights or of the Crown's legal obligations to our people.
Here with more on what to expect is Niigaan Sinclair. He's a professor of Indigenous Studies at the University of Manitoba and a columnist with the Winnipeg Free Press. Good morning.
Good morning.
So let's start with major projects. How much of a priority is this topic expected to be this week?
So over the next few days, you'll see several hundred chiefs, some of them attending virtually, some of them attending live in person on Algonquin territory out in Ottawa, discuss about 54 resolutions. But the 2 most important conversations will be around major projects, and the second will be involving water. Those will take up the lion's share, the most amount of time at the meetings. Major projects will be the most pressing issue because the federal government's imposition or the imposed deadline has been the fall to announce major projects that involve land and resources, and the requirement of those projects, dams, pipelines, mines, those kinds of things, involve a consultation period for First Nations for 1 year. It's almost impossible for any First Nation to be involved on a conversation that will get their rights recognized within a year, and certain protections for certain cultural considerations like water, like caribou, like orca whales, and so on. And so it's almost an impossible situation, and chiefs have to deal with this. And so at the AFN meeting, you'll see hundreds of chiefs that come together from very different geographies, cultures, languages, that are trying to bridge what is complicated interests, working with the federal government that is working very aggressively, almost impossibly so, to get projects done. And I think it's an inefficient situation. It's a situation involving, provincial premiers that are announcing pipelines that simply just don't get First Nations involvement. And as a result, you end up with litigation in the courts, a whole lot of conflict between certain First Nations acting competitively against each other's interest even.
You mentioned water, and also on the agenda today is a session on the Carney government's proposed First Nations Clean Water Act. Can you talk about this bill and remind us why it's controversial?
So this is Bill C-37. Water is a very pressing issue for many chiefs, and particularly about 50 or so that are under boil water advisories for decades in some cases. People who have to drink bottled water, they can't drink it out of their tap. They need to wash with that same bottled water, et cetera, et cetera. About 50 First Nations are in desperate situations, and many of them led what was a water walk yesterday through the streets of Ottawa to show the pressing issue of water. In 2021, there was a court decision which ordered the federal government through a class action suit to come up with legislation involving a First Nations right to water, or at least having their situations of emergencies dealt with. And so the federal government, the Liberal government under Justin Trudeau, what the decision was to recognize a First Nations right to water. That was supposed to be a long-term solution, which would guarantee what every other Canadian gets, which is to make sure that if there was an emergency situation involving water, it would be fixed right away. But the Carney government's response has been to remove the right to water and to deal only with those First Nations that are in emergency situations. That's about $4.6 billion over 5 years. And so the Carney's government, which is the same approach the governments have used over decades, which is deal with a few emergency situations, short term, basically kick the problem up the road, and have, First Nations constantly be in situations involving infrastructure funding, lobbying the federal government over and over again, or what the Trudeau government's intention was to fix this forever and once and for all. So chiefs have to make a decision. Do we lobby the federal government for a right to water, or do we support our relatives who are in emergency situations? About 50 or so of the 640 First Nations that are in emergency situations, do we deal with those? And chiefs will have varying different interests for that.
Egon, can you remind us what the role of the AFN is, and does it speak for all nations?
So the AFN is often criticized as being reactionary, being all over the place. And if you ever watch these meetings, there's 54 resolutions that will be discussed over the next few days. They actually won't get through them all. They'll get through a handful of them because it's oftentimes a lot of ceremony, a lot of protocol, a lot of different interests that all come up involving people who are oftentimes in very life and death situations, involving young people or crime or geographical location, those kinds of things. And so the AFN is this place, though, that's also very exciting. You see all these different 640 different chiefs from coast to coast to coast who all have different interests, who are trying to find bridges together. So you see a lot of politicking, you'll see a lot of compromise, you'll see even in the midst of a gathering, like sort of a panel on the stage, you'll see sometimes some confrontations, but you'll also see people who are coming up with solutions in real time. No other Canadian political forum really does this. You get sort of an inside baseball, inside the room, whereas if you pick any political party, for example, it's often a few people in a small room somewhere make a decision that everybody has to agree with. This is not what the AFN's about. It's 640 different interests all coming up with decisions and trying to come up with bridges together. But the AFN is not a government. No decision is binding for all First Nations. It is a lobby group. They come up with resolutions to commitments to work together on certain issues involving the federal government for the most part, but sometimes provincial governments too.
Today is just the first day of the annual assembly. Are there other sessions you'll be paying special attention to as the meetings continue?
Yeah, there is a few issues that are of keen interest for those of us who are, write about these things regularly. The first is Alberta separatism is the big issue. The chiefs in Alberta are getting a lot of support, and you're getting some unity. Not oftentimes do you get a lot of unity between regional chiefs organizations. Like, for example, in BC, there's 202 First Nations, which makes up about a third of all the chiefs at the AFN. So BC gets a lot of attention. But when BC pays attention to the issue, for example, of Alberta separatism and joins with the Alberta chiefs, we now suddenly got nearly half the chiefs in Canada unified on an issue. That doesn't happen very often. You've also got the issue of citizenship, Bill S2, which is intending to bring people back into First Nations who have been removed due to not having Indigenous parents or all, Indigenous parents in the past. And you've also got the issue of child welfare. Child welfare, which was the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal ordered decision for the federal government to fix the issue of poverty on First Nations, which are leading children into child welfare. The Ontario regional chiefs have organized and negotiated successfully an $8 billion settlement, and about 70% of the other chiefs across the country now want to organize and try to get their own settlements. And so you'll see some competitiveness, you'll see a bit of disagreement there, but you'll see chiefs that are looking to how do we situate or deal with the issue of emergency on First Nations that are leading children into the child welfare system? And, in Manitoba, 90% of the child welfare system is Indigenous children. And so we have to deal with this collectively because this is an issue for all Canadians. I hope everybody's going to be keeping an eye on these meetings.
Niigaan, really appreciate your time this morning. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, miigwech. Thanks so much.
Niigaan Sinclair is a professor of Indigenous Studies at the University of Manitoba and a columnist for the Winnipeg Free Press. And speaking of federal infrastructure projects, the federal government, the Alberta government, and 5 major oil sands producers have agreed to advance a multi-billion-dollar carbon capture project. It's a key condition if the province wants to build a new pipeline to the BC coast, a big discussion as we just heard at the AFN Annual General Assembly. And in the east, after a bit of a standoff with the Trump administration, the new border bridge between Ontario and Michigan is finally set to open at the end of the month. For a closer look at all of this and more, we've reached Ryan Tumulty. He's a political reporter with the Toronto Star. Good morning.
Good morning.
So carbon capture's effectiveness is still a topic of debate, especially at the scale proposed for Alberta's Pathways project. Why is Ottawa so focused on this as a climate solution?
Well, for one thing, I think, you have to put this in the context of this is what the industry is putting forward. This is what the industry that knows its facilities and its plants and does have some experience with this technology thinks can be done. They're prepared to put some money into it. Now they're getting very generous tax credits as well, but they're prepared to put some money into it. And I think on some level, this is, firstly, it's the federal government sort of calling the industry's bluff, saying you've said for many years you were prepared to do this, so it's time to put up. But also, I think there's a hope here that this is a technology that Canada can perfect, that can figure out the how to do on a large scale, and that as a result can then export that technology around the world. And certainly I think that's what they are hoping will take place.
And the agreement pushes the carbon capture project forward while also laying out a framework to increase oil sands production. How much political risk is the Prime Minister taking on here, trying to walk the line between industrialists, environmentalists, and the rest of his base?
Yeah, there's a lot of political risk here. I don't think this agreement is going to make everybody happy. That said, there is a little bit here for sort of everyone. Environmentalists can see this as an opportunity where the industry is paying a carbon tax. They are paying for this project. 2 things that Pierre Poilievre, for example, has said that he wouldn't impose upon the industry, and he would remove from requirements sort of instantly. So there's that potential here. I think there is, something for people who are promoting industry. They see a pipeline, they see a growth in the oil sands, they see a lot of benefit there. So everybody's, putting a little bit of water into their wine on this, and I think ultimately are landing on something that they can all live with if maybe they're not the most happy about it.
Ryan, we've also got the news that the Gordie Howe International Bridge will open on July 27th. Can you remind us why that was held up in the first place?
Yeah, Donald Trump. Donald Trump is why that was held up. I feel like I've said that a few times on this show this year, that, I'm starting to sound like a broken record, but he weighed into these negotiations ahead of the bridge's sort of original open date, which we believe was about a month or 2 ago, said that the deal with Canada was unfair, said that it had to be renegotiated. But he wasn't really a party to that deal. It should be noted that the deal was really between Canada and the U.S. state of Michigan. But he did have the ability to weigh in here. He did have the ability to make a point, and he did. So the deal was renegotiated, and now we can open this $6.4 billion bridge.
Prime Minister Mark Carney called this a good deal for Canada, but critics say it's just another concession to the Trump administration. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it can be both. It is absolutely a concession to the Trump administration. The previous deal said that Canada would pay for the cost of the bridge, which we did. We also paid for highway infrastructure in Michigan and connections over there. So it said that we would do all that and we would get all of the toll revenue until we are paid back. Now it seems like we're getting all of the toll revenue minus some money that is going to go into a sort of regional economic development fund in Michigan. We've agreed to some limitations on tolls that seem sort of designed to protect the Maroon family who own the Ambassador Bridge and who fought the Gordie Howe Bridge every step of the way. That said, this can also still be a good deal for Canada because it gets the bridge open. It gets more trade flowing between Canada and the U.S. And while we're not going to be paid back as fast, Canada is still going to be paid back over the length of this, bridge's operations. It's a long-term play for the government, I think, and as frustrating as I'm sure it will be for people, Canada is still going to get paid back in the end.
Quickly here, Ryan. NDP leader Avi Lewis says he will not run for a seat in any upcoming federal by-elections. Instead, he's focusing on rebuilding the party. What do we know about his rebuilding strategy?
Yeah, I think it's clear the rebuilding strategy happens outside the House of Commons. And that's something that the party needs. It needs more volunteers, it needs more donors, it needs to address its financial situation. It needs to move forward in a lot of different ways that don't necessarily involve the House of Commons. There are 7 by-elections here. I would say in 2 of them, the NDP are potentially competitive, but none of them is a lock. None of them is a guarantee for the party. And, I think Avi Lewis is deciding that he's going to run probably somewhere where he has connections, probably somewhere in the Vancouver area where he has run in the past. And I think he is putting himself forward there. And in the meantime, he's going to spend time getting the whole party ready for a general election in the future. If he was in the House of Commons, he'd be limited because it's still a 6-member caucus. Even if he had won a seat, it would still be a 6-member caucus. Which doesn't guarantee you much time in question period. It doesn't guarantee you any seats on committees. So I think he might be making the best of a situation by staying outside of the House of Commons.
Ryan, really appreciate your time this morning. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Ryan Tumulty is a political reporter with the Toronto Star. Turning now to news headlines with CBC's Heather Wells.
Good morning. Well, seniors at 3 Winnipeg personal care homes are feeling the heat. Air conditioning is out or limited at Dawnwood Personal Care Home, Pembina Place, PCH, and the Middlechurch Home of Winnipeg. Sherry Shindruck's father is a resident at Middlechurch. She says that facility's been without air conditioning for several days, and what's being done, she says, to restore it isn't good enough. Hundreds of people stood out in 34-degree heat at Winnipeg City Hall's courtyard yesterday, protesting a federal gun buyback program. 3 Manitoba Conservative MPs took part in that rally. They say that they were there because police resources in Winnipeg are supporting the confiscation program. We'll hear more in our next local news at 7:30.
Thank you very much, Heather.
Thanks.
Well, still to come on Information Radio, it is Disability Pride Month. We'll speak with a disability advocate about what Manitoba can be proud of and where we still have a lot of work to do. That conversation and much more still to come on Information Radio. World Report is next.
The Current. I'm Pia Chattopadhyay. After almost 200 years, a historic lighthouse on a remote island off the coast of Nova Scotia is facing an uncertain future.
This area claimed hundreds of ships starting in the mid-18th century.
We'll speak with a former keeper of the lighthouse who is now in a fight to preserve the centuries-old structure. That's coming up on The Current.
The Current, this morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. For the 3rd consecutive day, the U.S. has bombed Iran. Several areas have been hit near the Strait of Hormuz, including the city of Bandar Abbas. Iran is firing back, launching counterstrikes on Persian Gulf nations hosting U.S. bases. Fighting has been focused on the Strait of Hormuz and gaining control of the critical waterway. The CBC's Crystal Gomansing is following developments from London.
Missiles and jets roared into the sky as a part of a 5-hour-long American bombardment campaign.
The U.S. is exerting military might in order to neutralize Iran's ability to control the Strait of Hormuz.
Iran can easily harass shipping.
Mehran Kamravi is a professor of government at the University of Georgetown in Qatar.
Iran is keenly aware that it cannot go toe-to-toe militarily with the United States, and so it wants to turn the military conflict into an economic one.
The battle for the globally significant waterway is also prompting strikes across the Persian Gulf. Following the American operations, Iran hit back. The Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps claims to have hit weapons support depots, a satellite communication center, and accommodations for U.S. forces in Bahrain, as well as Prince Hassan Air Base in Jordan. The U.S. appears undeterred. President Donald Trump said yesterday the U.S. has tremendous amounts of ammunition.
And we're hitting them very hard, and it'll continue, and we'll see what happens.
The U.S. says it's blocking all Iranian vessels in the strait, but it's open for all others, although Trump says he plans to start charging tolls to provide safe passage. That flies in the face of international law, and it's unclear if any shipping companies would pay. Crystal Gamansing, CBC News, London.
Civilian seafarers are the ones paying the price in the Strait of Hormuz. Yesterday, an Iranian cruise missile tore into two UAE-flagged oil tankers in Omani waters. An Indian sailor was killed and several others wounded. The CBC's Susan Ormiston is in Mumbai following the story. And Susan, what is the response from the Indian government?
Well, look, I mean, this has just highlighted the vulnerability of Indian seafarers in this war. I mean, the Iranian strike on the Al Bahaya and the Mombasa killed one Indian seafarer, injuring 8 others, and 6 of those were also Indian nationals. So India provides about a fifth of the entire crew on commercial vessels globally, and since March 1st, 9 of those people have died. So this morning, the Indian Foreign Ministry summoned Iran's deputy ambassador in Delhi to register a formal complaint to Iran. And in a statement, India said it's deeply concerned and that targeting of commercial shipping must cease.
How does the latest hostility affect international shipping?
Well, it's not changing the crews. Many of them are stuck there behind the Strait of Hormuz. We talked to one Indian captain last week who got out, but he said he would not be going back to the Gulf until this war is over. For many of the crew, though, that's not an option. They have to bring home wages. But it's really increasing pressure again on India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi to keep mariners' safety at the top of his political agenda. I mean, families are asking for compensation for their deaths. You know, the pictures of bodies coming back from the Gulf, of course, are a very difficult thing for the country to see.
Thank you, Susan.
You're welcome.
The CBC Susan Ormiston in Mumbai. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security says an ICE agent shot and killed a man in Maine. A Colombian man was shot inside a vehicle early yesterday. Homeland Security says he was attempting to leave the scene of an immigration operation, but Maine Senator Angus King is questioning that.
The statement does not allege that the officer felt that he was in danger. The bottom line is you have to either fear for your own safety or the safety of others. And so far, we haven't seen evidence of that.
King says ICE officials told him the man was not the target of their warrant. This is the second fatal shooting by an immigration officer in less than a week. Last Tuesday, a 52-year-old Mexican national was shot and killed in Houston. Immigration and Customs Enforcement says he tried to ram agents with his vehicle, but Texas officials say the federal agency is not sharing any information or evidence. Prime Minister Mark Carney's push to build infrastructure is running into friction with First Nations leaders. The Assembly of First Nations is gathering for its annual General Assembly in Ottawa today. Chiefs say they welcome the economic development, but are warning Ottawa that consultation is a crucial step in the process. Olivia Stefanovic reports.
There's been a shift on priorities that we feel.
After working for a little over a year with Prime Minister Mark Carney, Assembly of First Nations National Chief Cindy Woodhouse-Neepanak can't say Carney considers the relationship with First Nations as the most important, like his predecessor.
It's different than what it was with Justin Trudeau, for sure.
One of the main differences is Carney's push to build major infrastructure projects as a way for Canada to assert its sovereignty and become less reliant on the U.S.
They want to expedite this process without coming to the table and talking to us.
Joanna Bernard is the AFN Regional Chief for New Brunswick. She says First Nations want economic development, but they want it done responsibly. And they need to be more involved as stakeholders, owners, and investors.
We're no longer going to be giving up our resources for a little bit of money here and there for education or housing. Those days are over.
Part of this week's AFN gathering will focus on planning another meeting. This one, a historic first between the AFN, premiers, and the Prime Minister, scheduled for this fall. Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News, Ottawa.
Environment Canada is issuing heat warnings and alerts across several provinces. Experts say temperatures in some regions could reach the mid-40s. It has health authorities concerned about heat-related illnesses. The CBC's Talia Sarv has more.
You leave this apartment?
Yeah. Going door to door, health workers in Montreal, like Runa Lila, hand out cooling kits. It's here keeping cool isn't just for comfort, but a necessity.
Some family, they don't have the AC. So in that case, this is very important.
From southeast Saskatchewan to Quebec's west, Canada is feeling the heat. 4 provinces under warnings this week. Jennifer Vanos researches connections between extreme heat and human health. She urges Canadians to take precautions, particularly children, seniors and those with pre-existing illnesses.
Pay attention to your body. Stay hydrated. If you're going to do activity, do it earlier in the day or find an indoor space that's cool to do it. Check in on each other.
2026 is on track to be one of the hottest years on record globally, which many climate scientists attribute to human-caused climate change. It comes as heat waves continue to grip Europe, where thousands of related deaths were reported in June. Talia Sarv, CBC News, Toronto.
Hong Kong is offering four-legged customers a seat at the table. Hundreds of restaurants across the city can now secure new permits, allowing dogs to sit inside with their owners. Officials hope reversing the decades-old ban will encourage more local spending. Laura Westbrook reports from Hong Kong.
A pug sitting on a chair inside a coffee shop. The first time this has been allowed in Hong Kong in more than 30 years.
We need to prepare some poster. We need to prepare our license to show on the wall.
Leslie Ng owns Trinity Dumpling Bar in the heart of Hong Kong's business district. His restaurant is one of more than 900 eateries, coffee shops and bars in the city that now allow pets into their premises. Dogs must be leashed and near their owners. Pet owners make up roughly 10% of the population in Hong Kong. Leslie Ng says since the pandemic, many residents have been spending their money across the border in mainland China, where prices are cheaper.
I don't think that will get us a lot of profit, but I think it's worth it because when it came into our business, it like more variety.
Customer Rex Feng is supportive of the policy.
Pets is our friend, so as long as they keep discipline, clean, don't disturb other people, I think it's very most welcoming policy.
Leslie says people aren't spending as much as before the pandemic, while rents have remained high for restaurants like his. So while he's happy that the city is becoming more pet-friendly, he will wait and see how much letting furry companions inside his business will help his bottom line. Laura Westbrook, the CBC News, Hong Kong.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime, cbcnews.ca. More than 60,000 people follow World Report, and you can too. Find us everywhere you get your podcasts. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Chloe Friesen, filling in for Marcy Marcusa this morning. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. 89.3 FM, 990 AM on our YouTube live stream or anywhere on your CBC Listen app. Thanks for joining us. Coming up on the show, forget mosquitoes. Another nuisance is back for the summer. Fish flies. And they're all over the coast of Lake Winnipeg and starting to flit around Winnipeg. Coming up, we'll learn more about these fishy creatures. And it's been over a decade since Manitoba introduced the Accessibility for Manitobans Act. And while it made big changes, One Disability Advocate says much more can and should be done to make life more accessible for all Manitobans. And just after 7:30, we're introducing a brand new contest. But first, it's time for news headlines with CBC's Heather Wells.
Good morning. Well, after months of speculation, we now know Winnipeg will soon be home to a professional women's soccer team. The Northern Super League has just announced its newest team will play in Winnipeg. It's expected to play at the Ralph Cantafio Soccer Complex on Waverly Street. We'll have a few more details coming up for you in our next news. As well, Opipon Napiwin Cree Nation says it still isn't getting clear answers about when the community's power will return. The First Nation declared a local state of emergency late last month as wildfire burned nearby. The vice chief there, Oliver Dysart, says it feels like the nation is fending for itself. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 7:30.
Thank you very much, Heather. That's such exciting news.
It's so exciting, yes.
Oh.
Lots of big Winnipeg names like Desiree Scott, part of this.
Amazing.
So yeah, we'll hear much more. They're going to release more details later this morning.
Oh, big day for soccer fans. All right, thank you, Heather.
Thanks.
That is CBC's Heather Wells. Well, hello and good morning to the Information Radio team. Darren Morash is our YouTube live stream producer. Abby Adiemi, our technical producer, here with a look at the weather forecast. Good morning.
Good morning once again, Chloe. Wildfire smoke and intense heat have triggered air quality warning and, of course, heat warnings across the central and parts of northern Manitoba today. And we are seeing relief in the southern parts of the province. But for the north, you don't expect that relief from the smoke till like Thursday when the winds begin to shift and then you get to see some clear air. Down south, it's clear. We don't have any heat alerts. It's largely a sunny day for the south. We're waking up to warm starts in Winnipeg. We're seeing temperatures hovering around 20 degrees. It's going to be mainly sunny as we build into the afternoon. Then we see some cloudy conditions. It's going to stay humid at some points. Just a bit of winds. We're seeing temperatures warm up to a hot high of 29 later today with the humidity factored in the city. It's going to feel close to 32 degrees before we cool to 18 later overnight. And there's a good chance of showers in the forecast tomorrow, Chloe, where we see temperatures around 25. But right now, Winnipeg, we are at 20.
All right. Thank you, Abby. Joining me now is Corey Funk. And Corey, before we talk about the commute, the news just came out.
Yes.
Winnipeg getting an NSL team, professional women's soccer.
I know, I'm excited.
Coming to Manitoba. If you could choose the name, we don't have many details yet, so we're not sure if there is a name yet. But any ideas? We got the Sea Bears, we've got the Jets.
Do you know what would be a cool one? Actually, that came to mind, the Lynx.
The
Lynx.
Especially with like Lumi, the popularity of that little guy who was rescued, or a girl. I can't remember.
I don't know. They're fierce.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's kind of a cool name. Lynx.
Abby just said flamingos. I don't know if it's a nod to Transcona.
If they were playing in Transcona, that'd be cool. But it's in south end of the city.
So it's pretty simple in terms of the names that already exist. It's Vancouver Rise FC, Ottawa Rapid FC, Montreal Roses. That's nice. Halifax Tides.
Oh, I was gonna say, does it have to be an R word?
I guess. Calgary Wild, and then just AFC Toronto, which isn't that exciting.
So it's more of like concepts as opposed to animals.
Right.
Okay.
There could be an animal.
The Winnipeg Winters.
Oh.
Oh, there we go. That could work.
I kind of like that.
Okay, yeah.
Winnipeg Winters. So far, I think that's our best idea.
Let's open up the listener line. Why
Yeah,
not?
call
if
us.
You have a suggestion. We don't know if they're going to announce the name today or not, but if you want to put in your 2 cents, you can call our listener line or you can email us. So call your listener line 204-788-3205, 204-788-3205, or you can email us radio893 at cbc.ca, and we'll talk about them on air.
Abby just added in my ear the Winnipeg Goose.
A singular goose, not
Goose,
geese.
just one goose. One angry goose.
One angry goose. There we go. Perfect. I guess I'm here to also talk about the commute. It's been a quiet commute overall here in the city. But if you do see something going on, if you're walking, you're biking, you're driving, you can give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number, 204-788-3093.
It was a landmark legislation and only the second of its kind in the country. The Accessibility for Manitobans Act became law back in 2013. The act provides a legal process to identify, prevent, and remove barriers for people with disabilities in Manitoba. It includes 5 pillars: customer service, employment, information and communication, transportation, and outdoor spaces. But over a decade later, has it made a noticeable difference? Peter Tong lives with cerebral palsy and is a longtime advocate for persons with disabilities. He is the owner and principal consultant at Peter Tong Consulting, and he joins us now on Disability Pride Month.
Good morning, Chloe. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing well. Thanks for joining us. If you had to just summarize it, what impact would you say the Accessibility for Manitobans Act has had in the past 13 years?
Well, I think it's a very important piece of legislation, and I think it's had a large impact for provincial government agencies and large institutions like schools and universities. As we'll talk about in a bit, I think it's had much less of an impact on private business, and that's part of where I think it falls down.
Right. We're going to get to where it's fallen short here, but what would you say are the most noticeable positive changes?
Well, I think one of my favorite parts is the third pillar around communication, where those larger agencies are required to make their documents and their materials accessible for people that use tools like screen readers. I think that's a big step forward, and it opens up good communication for lots of folks.
And in terms of where it falls short, I know you've mentioned there's specifications on a number of employees that an organization has to have in order for this to be really put into action.
That's right. So it's interesting because the law says that every business that has one employee or more must comply with the act. But then it goes on to say that any business that is less than 50 employees doesn't have to record what they do, or they don't have to create any disability or accessibility policies.
So it's not monitored in any way.
That's right. So, and that's key because only 4% of businesses in Manitoba have more than 50 employees. So only a small number of businesses are required to be fully compliant with the act. Technically, right?
Okay, and so this is why it's been beneficial, for governments and universities and schools then.
Right.
Okay. I want to mention, is there any enforcement at all? Like, they don't have to show proof if you're under 50 employees, but for the ones that are larger, is there enforcement? Will somebody come down and check if they're meeting the accessibility guidelines?
There is a complaint mechanism through a separate office called the Compliance Office, where you can make a complaint if you think an organization is not complying with the act. But I haven't been able to find anywhere where those complaints are recorded or what happens with them, so it's not very transparent. It's difficult to say if any enforcement is happening.
You mentioned that the pillar of information and communication was a real benefit. What about like customer service, employment, transportation, and outdoor spaces? Do they all kind of reach that same level?
Well, they don't, because the transportation pillar, for example, doesn't get enacted until next year. And the final one for outdoor spaces, they don't even have a date for when that will come into effect. So 13 years later, they've only put into force the first 3 pillars.
Okay, so 13 years later, these weren't all put in just instantaneously when the act was put into effect.
That's right. They all had a sort of a roll-in period.
Okay.
And we're yet to roll out the last 2. And it's interesting that the last one is outdoor spaces. There's no mechanism for indoor spaces. And the thinking at the time, as I recall, was, the building code will take care of that. but the building code doesn't take care of that if you're not building a new building.
Right, because older building codes wouldn't have had accessibility built in, really.
That's right.
Okay. Continue, please.
I'm just going to say, and if a business is not accessible, it doesn't just mean that people with disabilities can't be customers there. There's no potential for them to be employees there either. So it cuts down the employment field for those folks as well.
I want to move from that act from 2013 to something that's been back in the news. The recent publishing of the report titled Equality, Dignity, and Belonging, Building a Better System for People with Disabilities in Manitoba. Now, for our listeners here, some background. The report comes out of a human rights settlement involving 2 Manitobans with cerebral palsy who filed complaints in 2016 against the Manitoba government and the Winnipeg Regional Health Authority. It calls Manitoba's current disability services program, quote, fundamentally broken, and calls for it to be overhauled. At this point now, the province has 6 months to propose a plan. What's your sense on what happens next and the likelihood of full implementation?
I think the likelihood is quite good because there's this legislated sort of timelines now. There's a whole group of people with disabilities, and their lawyers and their representatives that are watching this very closely. So I'm hoping the provincial government is very aware of that we're watching to make sure that an implementation plan comes out in 6 months. And interestingly, when there was the press release for the final report, I mean, there were hundreds of people with disabilities that showed up to be part of that, just to show how important this was.
What sort of change would be most important to you of the 13 recommendations? Which one do you see as like the most kind of game-changing for folks?
Well, there are 15 recommendations, but the basic principle is what services are provided are based on needs, not what your particular disability is, what your age is, the community that you live in, what organizations you belong in, and that's key. So someone who requires the support of this program is independently assessed for their needs, and then those needs are addressed for as long as they need them to do so.
And a lot of this comes out of that initial complaint in 2016 because the folks had aged out of certain care. Is that something that you've experienced or noticed?
No, because I was not involved in one of... I've certainly noticed. It wasn't something that I did personally. I wasn't involved in those kinds of support programs. But literally, as the legislation exists now, you're getting presumably an adequate number of supports until you turn 18, and then all of a sudden they're all turned off. Like somebody doesn't magically lose their disability because their birthday changes, right?
Who benefits most from a more accessible world, city, community? Is it only the folks who have disabilities?
No, it's absolutely everyone. You have more people in the community working and contributing and taking part. And I mean, hopefully someday we'll get to the point that this is all just done as a matter of fact, which is part of what Disability Pride Month is about. It's celebrating the contributions of folks with disabilities and trying to remove the stigma, if you want to call it, that these are people that either are less able or need to be fixed.
For Disability Pride Month, what are you thinking about? Where do you find pride?
I find pride in working with my community. As part of the work that I do, we involve a number of people in the community with all kinds of various disabilities, and I learn every day. I have a particular experience as someone that uses a wheelchair, but I learn from my deaf friends and my blind friends and my autistic friends every time we work on a project, because that's not my experience.
What do you hope folks know or think about during Disability Pride Month? Because it's different. It's not just Awareness Month. It's Pride Month in particular.
I hope people notice the events that are happening and things that are going in the community, and that folks with disabilities aren't stuck at home feeling sorry for themselves. We're out in the community doing neat things.
Peter, I really appreciate your time this morning. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Peter Tong is a longtime advocate for persons with disabilities and owner and principal consultant at Peter Tong Consulting. Peter lives with cerebral palsy, and July is Disability Pride Month.
Manitoba is a conversation that never stops. From your first coffee with information radio to the midday pulse of Radio Noon and the drive home with Up to Speed, don't let your day get in the way of your favorite shows. Just open the CBC News app, tap the local drop-down, and hit play. Bring your community with you. Download the CBC News app and stay live with us.
Well, it is time to turn to sports news with Scott Regehr. And Scott, big day for sports news, particularly for Winnipeg and Manitoba. Tell us why.
Yeah, the new Northern Super League, Chloe, has announced that its 7th team in the Women's League will be situated in Winnipeg. This is the first expansion club in NSL history and will kick off next year for the 2027 season. It'll be co-founded by who else? The Destroyer herself, the former Olympic gold medalist Desiree Scott, the Winnipeg native, as well as the storied coach Rob Gale, who was the first head coach and GM of Valor FC. And I have to say, Chloe, I felt this was coming, a couple of months ago when I was talking with Diana Matheson, the co-founder of the Northern Super League, when she hinted expansion was coming by saying this.
We want to expand the league with the priority being somewhere central to Western Canada. We're a big country and we want the impact of professional pathways for girls and women to be across Canada. So we need to add some Northern Super League presence in, the prairies in Western Canada.
And now we have it. Rob Gale said that Winnipeg was the choice ahead of a couple of cities in Edmonton and Calgary, in part because such a large percentage of the population of Manitoba is within an hour's drive of Winnipeg, as opposed to in Alberta, where the population bases are spread out a bit more. So very, very exciting news. Winnipeg is going to have an NSL team.
Oh, so exciting. And we are trying to get in contact with Desiree Scott, our very own here in Manitoba, or Rob Gale to just chat and celebrate this news. So keep listening to Information Radio, and we'll hopefully have that conversation. But Scott, meanwhile, what will you be watching when the World Cup's first semi-final gets underway this afternoon?
Well, a lot of people, Chloe, taking work, or in my kids' case, summer camp off early. This tournament has captured the imagination of so many people. Part of the fun has been the music, by the way. And on that note, I offer up this ditty, which is not part of the 2026 FIFA soundtrack, nor is it a classic from World Cups past, but it is relevant ahead of today's game.
Beckham, Giggs, Scholes, but the strongest of them all. Zinedine Zidane.
That's the Zinedine Zidane song by a group called Vaudeville Smash. Who knew? Rightly or wrongly, it's been on high rotation this summer in my house, in my car, in my non-wireless headphones. Zidane, as our footy-loving listeners will know, is perhaps France's best ever player. And the last time they beat their opponent today at the World Cup, Spain, Zidane was among the goal scorers. Now, France didn't go on to win the tournament in 2006, but they did make the final, and but for a Zidane headbutt, they should have won it all. So can they do it this time around? Spain, I expect, will be their biggest obstacle. They are the last country, after all, to beat France in a competitive match, and the Spaniards have outscored their opponents at this World Cup 10-1 so far. Despite all that, French midfielder Adrien Rabiot says he likes his team's chances.
Since the start of the competition, there is this togetherness. We speak the same language. We all have that desire. We really feel that there is a sense of harmony. And then, well, there are also things that have meant that, for example, the difficulties the coach has experienced brought us closer together, tightened our desire to give everything, knowing that this is also his last competition at the head of the France national team. We're all pushing in the same direction.
Rabiot talking about his coach Didier Deschamps, whose mum passed away during this tournament and whose players have been supporting him since then. France were already a supremely talented, experienced side, Chloe, but winning for Deschamps with all that he's been going through is going to make them that much tougher.
And Scott, what about Spain? What do they need to do to win?
They need to dictate the tempo. La Roja, with their short, quick passing game, they're masters of that. The style of play is nicknamed tiki-taka, and they'll use it to keep away with the ball, kind of like a Spanish matador might with a French bull. So my hope is, Chloe, that France scores early and forces the Spaniards to be more positive in their play rather than playing keep away. We shall see. 2 o'clock Central Time, the kickoff.
All right. And Scott, just really quickly, Christina Litz, president of the Northern Super League, was actually just listening. She just wrote in to remind us that the Northern Super League does have a team in Calgary as well, with a little smiley face there. So
there we go.
There we go. Yep. Thank you, Christina. Thanks for listening. Thanks, Scott.
You bet.
That is Scott Regehr with your CBC Sports News. It's time now for your CBC Local News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells. In Winnipeg at 7:30, it's 21 degrees. Feels so much cooler than yesterday. Those heat warnings have ended for southern Manitoba, but there is a heat warning continuing for parts of central and northern Manitoba. Here in Winnipeg, a sunny start to Tuesday, increasing afternoon clouds, and a cooler high of 29. After months of speculation, we now know Winnipeg will soon be home to a professional women's soccer team. CBC reporter Gavin Axelrod has details.
It's what many soccer fans have been asking for. The Northern Super League has announced its newest team will play in Winnipeg. Canada's Professional Women's Soccer League currently has clubs in Calgary, Halifax, Montreal, Ottawa, Toronto, and Vancouver. Last year, the NSL started the expansion process for the 2027 season, focusing on markets in the central and western part of the country. It's expected the Winnipeg team will play at the Ralph Contafio Soccer Complex on Waverly Street. City Council approved a $600,000 grant to pay for upgrades to artificial turf and lighting at the facility. There are other renovations needed, but the city isn't paying for those. We'll learn more later this morning at a news conference at the Forks. Gavin Axelrod, CBC News, Winnipeg.
And we will have the latest on that story as we get more information. Seniors at 3 Winnipeg personal care homes are feeling the heat. Air conditioning is out or limited at Dawnwood Personal Care Home, Pembina Place PCH, and the Middle Church Home of Winnipeg. Sherry Schindrick's father is a resident at Middle Church. She says that facility's been without air conditioning for several days, and what's being done to restore it, she says, isn't good enough.
Everybody is saying the same thing. We're doing the best we can. Okay. You know, we've done everything we can. Okay. And I said, no, they haven't.
The Winnipeg Regional Health Authority says a mechanical issue is affecting air conditioning in some areas of the home. A spokesperson says crews are working to fix the problem as quickly as possible. They are using portable cooling equipment and say residents are able to access air-conditioned common areas. City officials in Winnipeg say emergency maintenance crews just couldn't keep up with demand to fix roads and sidewalks over the hot weekend. The infrastructure buckled after it expanded in the extreme heat and sometimes crumbled with cracks. Michelle Station works with the city's public works department. She says the city is looking at how to mitigate the impacts of heat on roads.
In the grand scheme of things, where, you know, with all the pavements we have in the city, it's pretty rare, but it's violent and very obvious and you know, quite dangerous. So when it does happen, it's noted.
The city says the damage seems to be worst in the south end. The province says at least 7 Manitoba highways, including sections of the Trans-Canada, also reported buckling. Opipon Napiwin Cree Nation is calling for better preventative measures against future wildfires. That First Nation declared a local state of emergency late last month as wildfire burned nearby. Most of the 1,100 on-reserve members of that First Nation have left the community. Chief Shirley Ducharme says the nation is in the same spot they were in last year with power outages and evacuations.
Manitoba Hydro must implement proactive mitigation measures, including, and we have stated this many times, vegetation and brush management.
Ducharme would also like to see pole wrapping and infrastructure protection. In an email, Manitoba Hydro says it cuts trees and wrapped more than 150 poles in the community with fire-resistant mesh, but adds it realizes there is more to be done and plan to do it as soon as possible. Hundreds of people stood in 34-degree heat at Winnipeg City Hall's courtyard yesterday, protesting a federal gun buyback program. 3 Manitoba Conservative MPs took part in that rally. Kildonan St. Paul MP Raquel Dancho says the rally was held at City Hall because Winnipeg is one of the few jurisdictions where police are administering the program.
The idea that we would have
taxpayer dollars going towards police resources that would support the confiscation regime when we have such limited policing resources it really seems very unfair and unsensical.
Winnipeg's mayor was not at City Hall during that rally. And the owner of a cottage that burned down during the Lynn Lake forest fire and 7 people who fled that fire have sued mining company Alamos Gold. In a lawsuit filed July 6th, the plaintiffs claim the gold miner started a controlled burn in May 2025 and let it get out of control. They are seeking $95,000 and other damages. Their allegations have not been proven in court and no statement of defense has been filed. Alamos Gold told CBC News in 2025 it had permits for the controlled burn and rejected allegations of negligence. You can find the latest news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
That is CBC's Heather Wells. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. I'm Chloe Friesen, joined by Abby Adiemi. He's here with a look at the weather forecast.
Yeah, good morning once again, Chloe. The south is clear of those heat alerts, though we're still enjoying some sunny conditions outside, and the humidity, you will feel it today. Then if you look up north, wildfire smoke and intense heat have really triggered this air quality and heat warnings across the south, the central and the northern regions this morning. Though we will see relief from the smoke, it is expected to swing in sometime on Thursday when we notice this shifting in the winds are beginning to clear the air. The Red River Valley at this time, warmest temperatures hovering near 21 degrees depending on where you are in the city. The day is going to be bringing mainly sunny skies with some clouds building this afternoon and of course some humid conditions. Winnipeg is heading for a hot high of 29 today, which will feel closer to 32. Now across the southern regions, we're seeing temperatures sit between 15 and 21 also under mostly sunny conditions and highs climbing into the upper 20s. In the Pembina Valley region, we're seeing sunny skies there, 21 degrees heading to 28. It's going to feel close to 35. In the Westman region, 18, 19 under mixed skies, a mix of sun and clouds, expecting a high of 27 today. There's a risk of late thunderstorms in that part of the province. And of course, the Parkland region, we're seeing clear skies there, 16 degrees at this time, warming close to 30 degrees. For the Interlake region, 18 degrees heading to a high of 28 later in the day. And then we get into the northern part where we're dealing with both smoke and air quality warning, and of course heat warnings there. Temperatures between 15 and 19. The part of Flin Flon Norway House, we're looking at 19 degrees there, heading close to 30 degrees. Thompson is currently at 17 with smoky conditions, aiming for a high of 28. While for the Lynn Lake area, we're seeing 16 degrees, 17 degrees, depending on where you are, aiming for a high of 27. Gillam is at 18 degrees, aiming for a high of 27. Also, there's a good chance of afternoon storms there. Then further north, 16 degrees around Sedula Lake, looking for a high of 27 with a good chance of late showers. While Churchill remains sunny at 15 degrees with a high of 22 and some gusty winds in the mix later. So it's more like a southern sunshine and hazy hot air quality, and of course a lot in the northern part of the province. We're expecting a high of 29 today in the city. Current temperature is 21 at the Fox.
All right. Thank you, Abby.
Thank you.
That is CBC's Abby Adiemi. I'm now joined by Corey Funk with an update on the commute. How's it going out there?
Going okay. It's been pretty quiet so far out there on the commute. Haven't heard of any major issues yet. But if you're walking your bike and you drive and you see something, you can give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number 204-788-3093.
All right. Thank you very much, Corey.
Thank you.
Well, we have a new contest to announce here on Information Radio. Blueberry Jam is Northern Manitoba's largest music festival. Set against Flin Flon's beautiful boreal landscape, this free 3-day family-friendly gathering brings together local and visiting performers for continuous live music across 2 unique venues. It's all happening August 7th, 8th, and 9th, and CBC is a proud sponsor. And we have a round-trip flight from Winnipeg to Flin Flon and a hotel stay to give away to you and your guest. Entering is simple. We're going to share an audio riddle here, about a public art piece in downtown Winnipeg. If you know the answer, you email win@cbc.ca. That's win@cbc.ca. Or you can call our listener line. Each correct answer is an entry, and a draw will take place Friday, July 17th. You and your guest have to be 18 or over to enter. Here is today's clue. I'm going to read it twice, so listen carefully. This tribute to one of Winnipeg's most violent days is a bloody way to start your Saturday. Again, this tribute to one of Winnipeg's most violent days is a bloody way to start your Saturday. Once again, if you know the answer, you can email win@cbc.ca or call our listener line. I'm just going to get that number here from Corey Funk. Our listener line escapes me at the moment. 204-788-3205. It is on the screen for you if you're watching on YouTube. Thank you. Or you can email win@cbc.ca. Each correct answer, again, is an entry, and a draw will take place Friday, July 17th. You and your guest have to be 18 years old or over.
No purchase necessary. Open to Manitoba residents 18 and older. Contest closes July 16th, 2026 at 8:30 a.m. Central. Grand prize is a trip for two to Flin Flon valued at approximately $2,000. Odds of winning depend on total eligible entries. Math skill testing question required. Visit cbc.ca/Manitoba/community for full contest rules and details.
Well, it is summer, a lovely time to be outside if it's not too hot out there. And it is that time of year. Fish flies are back in town. The type of mayfly looks like, I guess you could call it a tiny dragonfly with transparent wings and smaller tails. They also happen to smell like fish. It's estimated that up to 100 million of these insects live in each square kilometer at the bottom of Lake Winnipeg. And in places like Gimli, they surface on land in hordes so big they need to be shoveled off the sidewalks. I know, walking into work today, I saw 2 on the door that I came through. Jordan Bannerman is an instructor of entomology at the University of Manitoba, and he joins me now. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
I don't know how my description was of a fish fly, but how would you describe them? And tell us about their life cycle.
Yeah, they're a fairly large, very kind of primitive looking aquatic insect. So they have very large triangular wings, 2 long tails, and a very long slender body. They tend to be kind of tan, brownish in color. And the species that we have, particularly in Lake Winnipeg, for as far as fish flies or mayflies go, are very large as well, very noticeable.
And is it true that they spend most of their life underwater?
Yeah, so they actually have a very long life cycle. They spend up to about 2 years in their juvenile stage, which is aquatic, underwater, down in the mud at the bottom of the lake. And then they only live for about 2 days as adult insects, which is quite remarkable.
So the mayflies I saw this morning, they're only going to last like a day more.
Yeah. They emerge one day, they go to land, they will molt their skin one more time, and then the next day they return to the air to mate, and then they return to the water to lay their eggs, and that's it.
That's a very busy 2 days. I'm curious, their name, fish fly, how'd they get that one?
You know, so that's a very Manitoba local thing. There's a couple different reasons I would speculate. One, of course, anyone who's been up along the shores of Lake Winnipeg this time of year, when these mayflies, the ones that don't make it back to the water, when they start dying in high numbers, when they start decomposing, they actually produce essentially the same chemical as a rotting fish does. So they don't smell very good. They kind of smell like rotting fish, particularly in areas where there's a lot of them. But another aspect is that they're actually really important fish food as well. They are very important in the water as food for many of our important fish species in the lake, as well as birds and other insects, for example, once they get on the land.
So they do have a purpose within the ecosystem. They're not just annoying little flies that kind of emerge every summer.
Yeah, they are fundamentally important to the health of the Lake Winnipeg ecosystem. They're also found in many of our other lakes in the province, although not in as high numbers. And they're also found, the ones we're seeing in the city here right now are actually coming out of the Red River as well.
Oh, really? Okay, I was wondering how they got here.
Yeah. So we don't have the same numbers in the Red or the Assiniboine River as Lake Winnipeg, but there's still a lot, and the ones that we see around Winnipeg or any other of the southern cities are coming from some of those rivers.
We've had a very hot last couple of days, at least here. How does the weather affect their life cycle and kind of when they emerge from the water?
So the adults have a really short life cycle, so it's very important for them to kind of synchronize their emergence so that they emerge when all of the other insects have emerged as well, so that they can be successful in mating. So there seems to be a few cues that kind of time when this mass emergence occurs, but one of the big ones is temperature. So it always, each year, it tends to be around when the surface temperatures in the lake hit around 20 degrees. There's also probably some weather cues and a few other things that factor into it as well.
In terms of population, have we seen any changes over the years? Are these are they safe? Are their populations as high as they should be?
We have seen actually kind of historical collapses in these insects, for example, in Lake Erie, but there's also a good kind of success story on their populations rebuilding. The populations in Lake Winnipeg seem to be reasonably healthy, but we also do have evidence that they have declined, at least when we look at a really long time frame, like around 100 years. The densities are lower, but they're still holding in there. There are a lot of environmental threats to the lake, and we are kind of concerned, and these the populations are monitored.
Jordan, I can't let you go without asking about people eating fish flies. I have seen a video of someone in Gimli doing this. I know your colleague Jason Gibbs has said that these insects are indeed edible and high in protein, and some people say they taste like buttered popcorn. Have you tried this?
I have not. I don't know if I could to bring myself to do it, but I've heard the same thing. I've seen it. Obviously the fresh ones, the ones that are just coming out. But yeah, it's something that the odd person does partake.
Could you consider them seafood?
Close enough.
Maybe.
They're not all that different from a shrimp or a crayfish. Yeah.
All right. I might need a little bit more motivation to try it myself. I think I'm going to hold off for a little bit. But Jordan, I really appreciate your time this morning. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Jordan Bannerman is an entomology instructor at the University of Manitoba.
You know the voices that tell the story of our province. Now you can take them anywhere. From the essential start to your day on information radio to the conversations that define our lunch hour on Radio Noon and the pulse of the city on Up to Speed, your local connection is always within reach. Just open the CBC News app, tap the local drop-down, and hit play. Your favorite voices, your province, right in your pocket. Download the CBC News app today, your daily rhythm, live and local.
We are nearing the end of the 7 o'clock hour here, but coming up after 8 o'clock, as cases of cyclospora continue to rise across the U.S., many Canadians may be wondering if their fruits and vegetables are safe to eat. Later on the show, we're going to talk to a director with Canada's National Microbiology Laboratory about why Canada hasn't seen any cases of the parasite so far. But coming up next, the province has been experiencing a historic heat wave since Saturday. Yesterday alone, humidex values reached 45 degrees, and the heat warnings continue today for much of northern Manitoba, with temperatures in the late 20s every day across the province here, at least until Sunday. The heat can be very hard on anyone, especially those who are vulnerable and those without access to air conditioning. 3 Winnipeg care homes are currently without air conditioning, according to the Winnipeg Regional Health Authority. Donwood Personal Care Home has now installed AC in each room unit. Pembina Place says they are installing large air conditioners on each floor. And AC is also out at Middlechurch Personal Care Home in West St. Paul. That's where Sherry Shinduck says her elderly father is struggling. It's where a mechanical issue is affecting air conditioning in some areas of the building. And Sherry contacted CBC with her story, and she joins us now over Zoom. Good morning.
Good morning.
So you called CBC yesterday to talk about your concerns. What has been happening at your father's care home?
Yeah, I know. I visited my dad last last week on Thursday, and was faced with the extreme heat in the on his unit. And the staff there had indicated it had been out for a while. I was actually told it was out since Wednesday. They had indicated that maintenance and the management was aware that they were calling the maintenance team. Friday, no solution came. Maintenance team was out, but they put a couple fans in a hallway. But when the weather has been the extreme heat that we've been having, those fans are just moving some hot air around, and it was obvious as soon as they were installed, they weren't making a difference. Saturday comes, they have the I believe the maintenance crew is out again. Now they indicate that a part is needed, and at that point, a critical decision should have been made to determine what needed to be done to restore the conditions in the place. The levels were hitting 34 plus degrees is what I was told by staff through the weekend. Yesterday morning, I was back there, 32 degrees. It's still being registered in the place. There was no changes in terms of what they brought in for cooling devices. They did install a portable device yesterday, late, early evening, that has not brought any noticeable difference. I did go back in the evening, and it's the care of those individuals. I've witnessed a number of them in there. My dad, obviously, I'm spending time with, and he was just recovering from a respiratory issue that really knocked him down, and eating has been a big thing, and we've been struggling there. And he was bouncing back, and then this heat. They've indicated to me that he's not eating because it's too hot, and the condition is just not right. It's unacceptable to the decisions that were made in terms of what was put in place for any type of cooling device to try to regulate the temperature in that facility.
The cooling device you're talking about, is that like a portable air conditioner? Is that in his room?
Well, no, that the solution was fans. They put 2 fans, and I wouldn't even say they were industrial size, in the hallways. So there's the facility is structured with two sort of hallways and the nursing station in the middle with the dining area. So 2 fans in a hallway. That air was not circulating well. It was not reaching or had the ability to even get into the residents' rooms. The rooms are just stifling. And it was only on Monday, after a number of calls. They do say that they're on it and they're actioning it, but it was only Monday late that they brought in, and all I could see when I went back there was 1 portable air conditioning unit in 1 resident's room. It's not sufficient to drive the temperature to bring it down to what would be acceptable and comfortable for those residents.
You've also mentioned that the heat has also impacted staffing at the care home. What have you heard or seen about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I expected it. When I phoned the care facility on Saturday to see if things had changed, it hadn't, and staff were calling in sick, which I would expect. The condition is not favorable, and so they're short-staffed. They indicated to me they were short-staffed when I was there. I seen staff that were. I do believe they're trying to do their best and do the right thing for the for the residents there, but they're taking breaks. I saw them sitting in front of fans, eating popsicles, trying to their best to keep cool. They need to maintain that so that they have the energy to maintain the residents, but it was definitely impacting the staff as well.
The Winnipeg Regional Health Authority, which oversees the care home, says it has, quote, interim cooling measures like air-conditioned common areas and portable cooling equipment. They also say that staff are encouraging time in cooler spaces and offering extra fluids and colder foods to residents. What's your response to that? What has your experience been?
Well, I definitely know that they're trying to now move staff down to areas where there is air conditioning. So when I was there yesterday, I actually, my dad hadn't been moved all morning, and I was told he hadn't eaten all morning. So I did encourage him to get down to the cooler space. So they're trying their best. They're limited on space, but they're trying their best to bring those staff, the members, the residents down. But those residents are struggling. I witnessed a number of them as they're being brought. And I know my dad calls his room his apartment. It's his home. It's his comfort space. And they've brought them down. And there's, I've heard them saying, "Where are you taking me? What are you doing? I want to go back." they don't understand. So the stress that it's putting on these residents, not understanding and why things are the way they are. I do believe they're trying their best. I mean, the days I was there, my dad did not have ice water in his room. I had to go and actually get that for him. So I think the shortage of the staff has impacted the care. Just in general, the day-to-day care that they're getting has not been the same over the last few days, why they've been struggling with this heat event.
What do you tell your dad when you go visit? What do you talk about during this time?
Most of it is I'm bringing in food to try to supplement something that is better than a hot meal that he's not interested in eating right now. So I've been bringing in, fruits, watermelon, cherries, and as soon as I come in, he's interested in that. But my questions are usually, are you feeling okay? I've been, taking cloths and trying to cool him down. I mean, I brought a fan for his room. I don't think it's doing a lot because it's, like I said, it's just hot air in there that's being moved around right now. There isn't enough cooling devices. I haven't been to the facility this morning. I haven't checked in yet this morning. I will be going after this call. I'm looking to see that temperature gauge on the wall showing something below 32. But I just try to encourage my dad to eat. I encourage him to go and spend time in the cooling spaces, even though that's not where he's most comfortable. But it's the temperature down there at least is much more tolerable. I actually, when I went back in the evening, he was down in the lower levels in the cooling space, and I can just see the demeanor on him was better. You can see that bringing their temperatures down a little bit did help for those individuals.
Sherry, we just got about 20 seconds left here, but is there a solution you have in mind? Like how could residents be better protected in events like this in the future?
Yeah, I think a full review of what happened needs to be done here. I think it was a bit of a perfect storm. There was decision makers. It's vacation season. Some key decision makers weren't there. I don't know if there was a telephone train here and trying to get the right communication, having people on site that make decisions to really feel and understand what's going on there. Communication with families. We weren't communicated. Communication didn't come out till Monday. That needs to be key here too. And portable devices, cooling devices in the residents' rooms were a must in this situation.
Sherry, I really appreciate your time this morning. Thank you.
Well, I thank you guys too.
Sherry Shindrook is a concerned Winnipegger. Her father is a resident at Middle Church Personal Care Home in West St. Paul. CBC did reach out to the Winnipeg Regional Health Authority for more information. In an email to CBC, a spokesperson said, quote, "At Middle Church Home, a mechanical issue affecting air conditioning in a limited area of the home is being fixed as quickly as possible. In the meantime, residents are being supported with interim cooling measures, including access to air-conditioned common areas and portable cooling equipment where needed. Staff are also using established heat mitigation strategies, such as encouraging time in cooler spaces, offering extra fluids and cool foods, and promoting airflow throughout the home." Goes on to say the health, comfort, and well-being of residents remain our top priority, and staff continue to monitor residents closely while this work is underway, end quote. It's time now to head to news headlines with CBC's Heather Wells.
Good morning. Well, Winnipeg soccer fans have been waiting for this news. After months of speculation, we now know Winnipeg will soon be home to a professional women's soccer team. The Northern Super League has announced its newest team will play out of Winnipeg, and that will be the league's 7th franchise. So we'll hear more on that. And hundreds of people stood in 34-degree heat at Winnipeg City Hall's courtyard yesterday, protesting a federal gun buyback program. 3 Manitoba Conservative MPs took part in that rally. We'll hear from one in our next local news at 8:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
And we here on Information Radio working on getting in contact with Rob Gale, potentially one of the co-owners of that new NSL Winnipeg team. Lots to come here on Information Radio. Stay with us. World Report is next.
It's been 25 years since the film Wet Hot American Summer first came out, and director David Wayne is back with a new film. He'll tell you why Gail Daughtry and the Celebrity Sex Pass is the kind of goofball comedy your summer needs.
Like a Celebrity Pass thing? Exactly. Good luck with that.
Q, this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland. and on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts. The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current.
I'm Pia Chattopadhyay. After almost 200 years, a historic lighthouse on a remote island off the coast of Nova Scotia is facing an uncertain future. We'll speak with a former keeper of the lighthouse who is now in a fight to preserve the centuries-old structure. That's coming up.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Prime Minister Mark Carney's push to build infrastructure is running into friction with First Nations leaders. The Assembly of First Nations is holding its annual gathering in Ottawa today. Chiefs say they welcome the economic development, but are warning Ottawa that consultation is a crucial step in the process. Olivia Stefanovich reports.
There's been a shift on priorities that we feel.
After working for a little over a year with Prime Minister Mark Carney, Assembly of First Nations National Chief Cindy Woodhouse-Neepanak can't say Carney considers the relationship with First Nations as the most important, like his predecessor.
It's different than what it was with Justin Trudeau, for sure.
One of the main differences is Carney's push to build major infrastructure projects as a way for Canada to assert its sovereignty and become less reliant on the U.S.
They want to expedite this process without coming to the table and talking to us.
Joanna Bernard is the AFN Regional Chief for New Brunswick. She says First Nations want economic development, but they want it done responsibly. And they need to be more involved as stakeholders, owners, and investors.
We're no longer going to be giving up our resources for a little bit of money here and there for education or housing. Those days are over.
Part of this week's AFN gathering will focus on planning another meeting. This one, a historic first between the AFN, premiers, and the Prime Minister, scheduled for this fall. Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News, Ottawa.
Environment Canada is issuing warnings and alerts across several provinces. Experts say temperatures in some regions could reach the mid-40s. It has health authorities concerned about heat-related illnesses. CBC's Talia Sarv has more.
You leave this apartment? Yes.
Going door to door, health workers in Montreal, like Runa Lila, hand out cooling kits. It's here keeping cool isn't just for comfort, but a necessity.
Some family, they don't have the AC. So in that case, this is very important.
From southeast Saskatchewan to Quebec's west, Canada is feeling the heat. 4 provinces under warnings this week. Jennifer Vanos researches connections between extreme heat and human health. She urges Canadians to take precautions, particularly children, seniors and those with pre-existing illnesses.
Pay attention to your body. Stay hydrated. If you're going to do activity, do it earlier in the day or find an indoor space that's cool to do it. Check in on each other.
2026 is on track to be one of the hottest years on record globally, which many climate scientists attribute to human-caused climate change. It comes as heat waves continue to grip Europe, where thousands of related deaths were reported in June. Talia Sarv, CBC News, Toronto.
An ICE agent claims he feared for public safety when he shot and killed a motorist. A man was killed in Maine during an immigration operation yesterday morning. This is the second time in a week that a person has been shot and killed by an immigration official. I'm joined by the CBC's Katie Nicholson in Washington. And Katie, what do we know?
It's not a whole lot. We know that yesterday morning ICE agents were conducting an operation in Biddeford, Maine. It's roughly 30 kilometers south of Portland, and they shot and killed this 26-year-old man from Colombia, and he was in a white Kia. Video of the scene in the aftermath, they show ICE agents pulling the man's limp body from the Kia and multiple bullet holes in the front windshield. And what led up to that moment is now under intense scrutiny. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security said that ICE tried to stop the car, and they allege it was coming from an address they were targeting and that the car attempted to flee the scene. And the ICE officer fired because he was, quote, fearing for public safety. But Maine Senator Angus King is among the many questioning that statement from DHS.
The bottom line is you have to either fear for your own safety or the safety of others. And so far, we haven't seen evidence of that.
Now, King says that the DHS secretary also told him the man was not the target of the ICE operation. And of course, this comes within a week of ICE agents fatally shooting a 52-year-old Mexican man who was also not the target of a removal operation.
These are not the first high-profile shooting deaths by ICE agents. What more can you tell us?
Well, look, it comes as prosecutors in Minnesota are still trying to get to the bottom of the ICE-involved shooting that took the lives of Renee Good, and a few weeks later, it was Alex Preddy. There's also this wider scrutiny. The way that ICE has conducted itself continues to spark outrage and protests in the country, including now a ramping up of that dissent in Maine.
All right. Thank you, Katie.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Katie Nicholson in Washington. In Bahrain, police and paramedics rushed towards a cloud of smoke in the capital, Manama. It was one of the areas targeted by Iranian airstrikes overnight. Iran's Revolutionary Guard put out a statement that was read on the local state media.
The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps said several weapons support depots, a satellite communications center, and accommodation buildings for U.S. forces in Bahrain had been targeted in the second wave of Operation Nasser II.
Both the U.S. and Iran are vying to control the Strait of Hormuz. U.S. President Donald Trump is now floating the idea of charging a toll for safe passage through the waterway, something he had called illegal. Iran is accusing the U.S. of inciting vessels to use an illegal route. Iran says cooperation with the U.S. would result in damage, delays, and a global energy crisis. Civilian seafarers are the ones paying the price in the Strait of Hormuz. Yesterday, an Iranian cruise missile tore into two UAE-flagged oil tankers in Omani waters. An Indian sailor was killed and several others wounded. The CBC's Susan Ormiston is in Mumbai following the story. And Susan, what is the response from the Indian government?
Well, look, I mean, this has just highlighted the vulnerability of Indian seafarers in this war. I mean, the Iranian strike on the Al Bahaya and the Mombasa killed one Indian seafarer, injuring 8 others, and 6 of those were also Indian nationals. So India provides about a fifth of the entire crew on commercial vessels globally, and since March 1st, 9 of those people have died. So this morning, the Indian Foreign Ministry summoned Iran's deputy ambassador in Delhi to register a formal complaint to Iran. And in a statement, India said it's deeply concerned and that targeting of commercial shipping must cease.
How does the latest hostility affect international shipping?
Well, it's not changing the crews. Many of them are stuck there behind the Strait of Hormuz. We talked to one Indian captain last week who got out, but he said he would not be going back to the Gulf until this war is over. For many of the crew, though, that's not an option. They have to bring home wages. But it's really increasing pressure again on India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi to keep mariners' safety at the top of his political agenda. I mean, families are asking for compensation for their deaths. You know, the pictures of bodies coming back from the Gulf, of course, are a very difficult thing for the country to see.
Thank you, Susan.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Susan Ormiston in Mumbai. You don't have to cross the Atlantic to find passionate French soccer fans. Just head to the southern coast of Newfoundland. Ahead of today's World Cup semifinal match between Spain and France, locals in Fortune say they'll be cheering for their neighbors on Saint-Pierre and Miquelon. Laura Howells explains.
If Canada couldn't do it, why not have our neighbors bring it home?
Ambrose Price is by the ferry terminal in Fortune, the small Newfoundland town where you catch the boat to France, just 90 minutes away.
We're so close, you could literally kick a soccer ball from here to St. Pierre if you wanted to.
The French islands of Saint-Pierre and Miquelon are about 45 kilometers off the coast, and it's a far cry from rural Newfoundland. They use the euro, different electrical outlets, French cars on the street, shops close between noon and 2. Jennifer Robert manages the ferry service.
You get a lot of people from St. Pierre who buy cabins and cottages and spend their summers here in Newfoundland, and then you also just get people coming back and forth all the time.
There's a long history connecting the two places. Joshua de Lizarga lives in Miquelon.
There are islanders there, we are islanders, so there is something special when we are from islands.
Brian Rose grew up playing hockey against teams in St. Pierre. There's a sports rivalry there. But in the World Cup, he's laying down arms.
You know, we were cheering for Canada while we were in the big match, but now that we're not, we're hoping our friends can have some success.
Ambrose Price will be watching the match later today.
We really hope that they bring home that cup.
Laura Howells, CBC News, Fortune, Newfoundland and Labrador.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. For news anytime, cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Chloe Friesen, filling in this morning for Marcy Marcusa. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC Radio 1. 89.3 FM, 990 AM on our YouTube live stream or anywhere on your CBC News app. Well, it's official. Women's professional soccer is coming to Winnipeg. The city was chosen as the Northern Super League's first expansion team location. We're going to speak with one of the co-founders coming up on the show as well. Cases of cyclospora continue to rise across the U.S., and many Canadians may be wondering if their fruits and vegetables are safe to eat. We'll talk to a director with Canada's National Microbiology Laboratory about why Canada hasn't seen any cases of the parasite so far. But first, it's time now for news headlines with CBC's Heather Wells.
Good morning. Well, seniors at 3 Winnipeg personal care homes are feeling the heat. Air conditioning is out or limited at Donwood Personal Care Home, Pembina Place PCH, and the Middle Church Home of Winnipeg. Sherry Schindruck's father is a resident at Middle Church, and she says that facility's been without air conditioning for several days, and what's being done to restore it, she says, is not good enough. Opipon Napiwin Cree Nation says it still isn't getting clear answers about when that community's power will return. The First Nation declared a local state of emergency late last month as wildfire burned nearby. I'll be back with more on those stories and others coming up at 8:30.
All right. Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
Well, let's say good morning to the Information Radio team here. Darren Morash is our YouTube live stream producer, and Abby Adiemi, our technical producer, has been keeping an eye on that weather forecast.
Yes, sunny in the southern parts of the province, while for the central and the northern region, we have smoke and heat warnings in place. Winnipeg, we are at 22, aiming for 29. It's going to feel close to 33.
All right. Thank you, Abby.
Thank you.
And turning to show director Corey Funk, who's been keeping an eye on the commute.
Yeah, quiet commute overall so far here in the city. But if you do see something going on, if you're walking your bike and you're driving, you can give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number, 204-788-3093.
Well, more than 3,000 cases of cyclospora have been reported across Michigan and Ohio, according to state health officials. On Friday, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention reported 843 confirmed cases across 31 U.S. states. The parasite can cause symptoms including nausea, weight loss, and watery diarrhea. A spokesperson for the Public Health Agency of Canada has said cyclospora is, quote, not commonly found on food and is not in drinking water in Canada. Nevertheless, many Canadians have understandable concerns about the parasite. Céline Nadon is director with Canada's National Microbiology Laboratory, part of the Public Health Agency of Canada. She joins me this morning in studio. Good morning.
Hi.
So, what is cyclospora? How sick does this really make you?
So cyclospora is a parasite. It's a type of microorganism, and it causes an intestinal illness. And, it's no wonder people get concerned when you hear and read headlines that include things like explosive diarrhea. So of course, Canadians are wondering, what is this, and should they be concerned? People become infected with this parasite when they consume eat or drink food or water that's been contaminated with the parasite. And now human waste or fecal material is the ultimate source of contamination. The parasite's endemic in subtropical and tropical regions of the world, so not in Canada.
Do we know why we're seeing cases increase so rapidly in the U.S. right now?
Well, we typically see cases increase in the summertime. Canada does see about 300 cases of cyclospora every year, and it peaks in the summer related to the hot temperatures. We don't have any outbreaks that we are investigating right now. We expect a small increase over the summer months. most or many of those cases that we do see in Canada are associated with travel. So people leave the country to one of these endemic regions, acquire the illness there, and then are diagnosed back at home. Or they come from consuming fresh produce that's been imported from these regions.
That was one of my questions, because I'm seeing a lot of talk. I know that my own mom messaged me, right? People get really worried about this stuff, right? As you said, the headlines are scary, saying you should watch out if you're buying any fruit or vegetables from the U.S. Is that a valid concern? Should we be looking at our fruit or vegetables and washing them if they're from the U.S.? Does that help?
So this particular parasite can be difficult to remove. So washing it might not remove it from your fresh fruits and vegetables. But there are definitely things that Canadians can do to reduce their risk. And this is what I told my own mother when she called me with these same questions a few days ago. Follow basic food safety handling practices in your own kitchen. And so washing your fruits and vegetables under cool running water, cutting away damaged parts, paying attention to expiry dates. If you have produce from fresh fruits and vegetables from these endemic regions, you can cook them.
Okay, and that will help.
Or eat locally grown produce. Eat fresh fruits and vegetables that are grown in Canada.
Is there, because we're seeing this and we're seeing the connection of fruits and vegetables being part of this, will any, should transport and the sale of vegetables and fruits from these areas be stopped? Like, is there any talk about putting recalls out?
So, one thing that's important to know that if and when there are cases or outbreaks that happen here in Canada, we have systems in place to detect and respond and investigate to them. And that would include identifying the source and putting out any food recalls or restrictions or advice when we know what the source is.
For folks who are maybe at the grocery store, heading to the grocery store, or even traveling to the U.S., maybe in some of these areas, what's your best piece of advice?
For travelers, follow the local public health advice of where you are traveling. And that's your best source of information is the public health advice for the local place. Another important thing to know is that if you do have symptoms, you should see your healthcare provider and follow any testing and treatment advice that they give you. And then local or provincial public health officials can investigate to help figure out where it came from. It's also, to help not to worry too much that we do have systems in place to detect, and surveillance is underway. Innovations in science are happening to help us understand this parasite, which we, compared to other diseases transmitted by food and water, we know a lot less. And take those steps to reduce your risk by looking for local produce, following food safety practices, and cooking produce from those endemic regions.
There's nothing like a good apple or strawberry crisp as well, right?
It's summertime.
Perfect. All right. Celine, thank you so much for joining us and helping us understand and clear some of this concern up.
Thanks for having me.
Celine Nadon is a director with Canada's National Microbiology Laboratory based in Winnipeg.
Feel that? That's the thrill of the Northern Super League. And it's back on CBC Gem, with 6 fierce clubs battling all season long for glory. From coast to coast, Canada's first professional women's soccer league is bringing the heat. For the fans who live for the roar of the crowd, the last-minute winner, and the moments that make sports unforgettable, this is your season. Watch the Northern Super League all season on CBC Gem.
And here in Winnipeg, we have all the more reason to watch the Northern Super League. As you've been hearing in the news, Winnipeg will be the home to the NSL's newest team. Here is its co-founder, Winnipeg-based soccer star Desiree Scott, introducing the team on Instagram.
People doubt us in Winnipeg, what we're capable of. Like no good players could be from here. Nothing is expected of us, so we fight for everything we get. And we work harder than anyone that thinks it's going to be handed to them. I spent my life defending home. And now I'm ready to shape its future. My dream for Winnipeg is that we stop asking if we belong on the world stage. And instead, show up and take our place. Introducing NSL Winnipeg. Destroy doubt.
Oh, I have chills. That is Desiree Scott, aka The Destroyer, introducing the new Winnipeg Northern Super League team on Instagram. And a former Winnipeg Valor FC coach, Rob Gale, will co-found that team with her and co-own it. Rob joins us this morning. Hello.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. How does it feel to finally have the news out there?
Yes, very exciting. It's been many months and hard work in the making, but we've known for a little while, and now to be able to reveal it to the public and celebrate with all the soccer community and the Winnipeg community at large is really pleasing.
Can you take us to the beginning? At what point did you think or recognize that Winnipeg would be a good spot for an NSL team?
I think I came here in 2005. It's a long time we've had a professional women's sports team, let me tell you, and having done it with the CPL, and as soon as Desi and I knew that the NSL was launching, I think our first conversation around this was in May 2024?
Okay, long time coming.
We said we need to bring this to Winnipeg, as Desi says in the promo video there on Instagram. It's a long time coming, and why not us on the world stage?
Folks will know your name. You used to coach the professional men's team here in Winnipeg. Why do you think an NSL team will succeed here in Winnipeg, where Valor unfortunately did not?
Look, we're not competing with any other women's sports. We are professional, the first ever women's professional sports team. There's no other between Calgary, Toronto, Minneapolis. It's 2026. Women's sports is one of the fastest growing sports industries worldwide, fastest growing businesses worldwide. And we know we're a soccer community and a passionate fans and sports base. And now it's time to let the women shine, as they have done many, many years on the national stage with our national team.
And you've witnessed women's professional soccer and coached women's professional soccer, not here in Canada, but out in Portland. What do you think you'll bring from that time here to Winnipeg?
Yeah, I was very fortunate to work with the Portland Thorns, probably the flagship women's soccer team in world football, and has been for many, many years. Passionate fan base, very similar community to Winnipeg, diverse, loves its sports, very welcoming to everybody. And if you can keep that engagement and that community, and we can make the fan experience and match day experience absolutely top level, plus the beauty of the Northern Super League is it really can be one of the top women's leagues in the world. And in its first year, it's established itself as that. So we have the chance to bring the world's best talent to Winnipeg.
And Rob, we know that you co-own the team, but you're a coach. Will you be involved in coaching the team at all, having your lengthy coaching experience?
No, this is not for me to coach. Desi and I feel that with our passion for the project and everything else, we were better served trying to get the team up and running and to bring it here and offer our support, having brought a club to Winnipeg with the CPL as well and been involved in that. I think my expertise can help in the other levels of the game and provide some opportunities, hopefully for Manitobans and more female coaching staff down the line as we build something for the long-lasting future here.
How hard do you think it'll be not to just, share a tip or trick or two while you're around the squad?
No, I understand my role, and I'm going to stay firmly in my lane and just be a support and enjoy it as a fan as well. What a great privilege for us to be able to have professional soccer here back in Winnipeg.
Rob, when the news came out at around 7 a.m. here, we were throwing back and forth some name ideas. Do we have an official name of this team yet?
No, we're going to guide everybody. Actually, the website is up and running now, wpgnsl.ca, and we're going to have a fan guess the name competition.
Ooh.
There's QR codes for that. There's a draw the mascot competition. There's going to be a lot of things that we want to make sure all of Manitoba are involved in building this club's identity and what it means to people here. So no official name yet.
Okay, but there is one. We just have to guess it. Is that what you're saying?
No, you can guess the name and you can predict what it might become.
Okay, so it might be what you suggest.
Absolutely.
Oh, I gotcha. That's very fun, very fascinating. I'm not sure how the NSL works in terms of making teams in drafts. I know like PWHL has a bunch of expansion teams. That's probably the closest example I have in terms of drafting and adding players. How does the NSL work? Where is this team base going to come from?
So no, in terms of the expansion, there's not a draft. We have to compete with all the other teams to sign players, just like building a brand new club. So we have the pick of players worldwide, very similar to Vela previously. And because this league is by Canadians for Canadians, we want to have Manitoba players, young female athletes competing and playing in our team.
All right. Any Manitobans you have your eye on yet?
Yes, many. I was out scouting the Prairie Premier League recently, and the Bonnie Vital team just won the inaugural one of that, which is an awesome achievement. But there's FC Manitoba, Lucania who are in those teams. We have many talented players across the country in youth sports, also down in the States at NCAA. And like Desi, there's a lot of athletes who've had to go abroad and try and find opportunities there. And we're just so delighted now that they can fulfill their dreams here at home.
Rob, can you remind us, when will all of this kick off here in Winnipeg? I know there's a lot of building and planning to do, but when can we expect some games here?
So the season will begin April 2027, so not too far away. A little bit of a hurry up and get things moving here for us in terms of building the squad. But we will hope to have our first game, depending on venue and everything, confirmed by at the latest June 2027. So not long to wait, fans.
Such good news, Rob. Thank you so much for joining us.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you guys for all your support.
Rob Gale is co-founder of the Winnipeg's new Northern Super League soccer team.
again.
Let's Do It Again by Benet featuring Mallrat. That was actually the official song of the FIFA Women's World Cup in 2023. It's now time for your CBC local news.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg at 8:30. Sunny, 22 degrees. That heat warning has ended. We still will feel warm, a high today of 29, increasing afternoon clouds as well. Well, professional women's soccer is coming to Winnipeg. Months of speculation are over, and we now know Winnipeg is the Northern Super League's 7th franchise team. Details from CBC reporter Gavin Axelrod.
It's what many soccer fans have been asking for. The Northern Super League has announced its newest team will play in Winnipeg. Canada's Professional Women's Soccer League currently has clubs in Calgary, Halifax, Montreal, Ottawa, Toronto, and Vancouver. Last year, the NSL started the expansion process for the 2027 season, focusing on markets in the central and western part of the country. It's expected the Winnipeg team will play at the Ralph Contafio Soccer Complex on Waverly Street. City Council approved a $600,000 grant to pay for upgrades to artificial turf and lighting at the facility. There are other renovations needed, but the city isn't paying for those. We'll learn more later this morning at a news conference at the Forks. Gavin Axelrod, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Seniors living in 3 personal care homes in the Winnipeg area are struggling with heat and no air conditioning. The Winnipeg Regional Health Authority confirms it is a problem in Donwood PCH, Pembina Place, and Middlechurch personal care homes. Sherry Shindrick's father lives in Middlechurch. She says staff have been doing what they can with fans in the hallways, but the rooms are still too hot.
32 degrees. It's still being registered in the place. There was no changes in terms of what they brought in for cooling devices. They did install a portable device yesterday, early evening, that has not brought any noticeable difference.
Shindrick says the heat is impacting her father's health because it's too hot to eat. She says staff are also calling in sick. The Winnipeg Regional Health Authority says a mechanical issue is affecting air conditioning in some areas of that home, and crews are working to fix the problem as quickly as possible. A number of summer camps in Winnipeg have been slashing outdoor time during the heat wave. The Winnipeg School Division says it's important to keep their programming going because many families don't have air conditioning at home. On scorching days, they're reducing physical activity. In the South End, the Fort White Alive camp is having breaks held inside, looking at more water activities. Leah Smith is with that camp.
Overheating holds a lot of havoc on the body, and especially with children that might not have that kind of experience understanding what their body is communicating when they're really hot. So it's really our job to make those decisions for them.
Provincial baseball championships changed schedules over the weekend because of the heat. Opipon Napiwin Cree Nation says it still isn't getting clear answers about when the community's power will return. The First Nation declared a local state of emergency late last month as wildfire burned nearby. Most of the 1,100 on-reserve population has left the community. Vice Chief Oliver Dysart feels like the nation's fending for itself. He says it all adds pressure on the hundreds of scattered community members.
Because they are displaced. They're away. They're from the comfort of their home, from the comfort of their community, as well as the comfort of their families, because they're all separated within these communities.
In an emailed statement, Manitoba Hydro says ongoing wildfires and windy conditions are making the area too dangerous to do detailed inspections or gather estimates for repair times. The owner of a cottage that burned down during the Lynn Lake forest fire and 7 people who fled the fire have sued mining company Alamos Gold. In a lawsuit filed July 6th, the plaintiffs claim the gold miner started a controlled burn in May 2025 and let it get out of control. They're seeking $95,000 and other damages. Their allegations have not been proven in court and no statement of defense has been filed. Alamos Gold told CBC News in 2025 it had permits for the controlled burn and rejected allegations of negligence. 3 Manitoba Conservative MPs made a rare appearance outside Winnipeg City Hall yesterday. Kildona St. Paul MP Raquel Dancho, Colin Reynolds of Elmwood Transcona, and Provencher's Ted Falk spoke at a rally against a federal Liberal gun buyback program. Dancho says City Hall was chosen because the Winnipeg Police Service took part in that plan.
Unfortunately, Winnipeg is one of the only jurisdictions in the country that's really going along with this nonsensical plan. I'm very proud of our Winnipeg police, very proud of the work they do. Unfortunately, we don't have nearly enough police to keep up, as you know, with the violent crime in this city.
The Winnipeg Police Service says violent crime in Winnipeg dropped in 2025. You can find the latest news updated throughout your day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Heading to Corey Funk now for a quick update on that commute.
Yeah, been quite a commute overall. Though Highway 493 from Leaf Rapids to South Indian Lake, that's in northern Manitoba, closed because of a fire that just closed yesterday. So I'm sure people are well aware of that in that area, but avoid that if you can. But down here, pretty quiet commute overall.
All right, thank you, Corey. Abby Adeyemi has one last look at the forecast.
Heat and air quality warnings active for central and northern Manitoba. Smoke is impacting the folks in that region, and it's getting hot due to sunny conditions. For the south, we're seeing temperatures warming close to 30 degrees. At Winnipeg, we get to 29 today.
All right. Thank you, Abby. And thank you to Darren Morash, our YouTube live stream producer, and to our associate producers today, Michaela Van Kooten, Kaylin Monkman, and Sophia Peralta Barone. Also, thanks to our show producer, Nelly Gonzalez, and our senior producer of audio, Leif Larson. I'm Chloe Friesen, filling in for Marcy Marcusa. I will be back with you again tomorrow. Looking forward to it. The Current is next.